Yeah. I actually have a picture just recently where I shaved half of my beard. So you can see, like, the half and half.
How long did you... when did you guys go on the road trip?
That's what I said 3 months ago.
Sorry, I wasn't paying
Yeah. Clearly.
So this is a podcast.
What?
This is the Thirst Trap Hour. What's good?
Thirst Trap Hour?
Yeah, because I'm not wearing a shirt.
Should I not be wearing a shirt?
No, it's just...
I'm gonna wear my shirt and have my...
You should have your safety blanket.
Safety
I've
blanket.
got Turt, and I just realized I should take off this little...
It's okay. We know you're a consumer. Avid consumer.
Bought this at the Valencia Aquarium, which is the largest in Europe. It was very...
Is that supposed to be significant?
No. Don't you defile my little turtle.
There's nothing wrong with my mouth. It's only the dirtiest part of my body.
I want to hear the shit though. Let's get the backstory first. For for the two people that may watch this at some point.
The gay man.
Okay, so Lee, my best friend since 4th grade, lived in the back house of...
It was a shed.
He lived in the shed.
Okay, okay.
You can do it.
Yeah, this is better. I had to, like... Because I think it's normal, but it's not normal, so I have to
I think it's fine.
describe it in terms...
Also, nobody, like, without knowing you as a person and, like, the context of you, it sounds crazy, but, like, knowing how stable and intelligent you are, really, it makes a lot of the things you do seem okay.
I get that.
So, without anybody knowing who you are, the story is going to sound wild as shit.
That's
to
true.
me, I'm going to be like, that's nuts. What do you want to get for dinner?
Yeah. That is an interesting thing, not to get, like, meta on the discussion, but I often, like, I'll be telling a story to Mason or somebody another close friend, and they'll just be kind of like, this is normal.
Yeah, because
like, okay.
Because we've all accepted the way you live your life.
Yeah. So
because it's not like, oh, he needs help. It's like, this is an active choice.
Yeah,
and
so
he's
this is
doing
fine.
okay.
Yeah, he's doing. This is normal. It's like, if he wasn't doing it, I'd be a little worried.
I'd be very worried. Like, my brother told me the story that you're about to tell me. Not that I've heard it before, but I'm sure I would be like, hey, let's gather up the family and figure out a better place for him to live collectively.
Yeah, so...
Take some agency away from this
I
man.
guess, like, turning back the clock as far as I can in terms of living situations, I was living in a normal apartment, which I was using as an Airbnb for the second room.
I didn't know that.
And basically paying no rent, which was fantastic.
I do that with my house in Texas, and it is fantastic. I didn't know you ever lived in, like, a domicile. I've only ever known you to live at college after, you know, in the dorms or apartments, in a school bus.
I actually never lived in the school bus because the homeless guy took it over. Yeah.
And then in a van.
Now truck.
And now truck. And it had like one of those pop-up things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird to think about. It's more weird to think about you in an apartment.
I had a very brief attempt at normal society, actually. Okay. Yeah, and most people don't remember that era. It was short. It was like 3 years or something. So I lost that apartment because they were renovating it to sell it, or increase the rent or something. It was fairly cheap.
Okay.
And it was great, and they didn't know I was doing the Airbnb, so everything went under the radar. But when I got kicked out of that place, I couldn't afford anything else because rent everywhere had gone up. So I was sleeping on couches and getting my final pilot's license to be a flight instructor.
Right.
In terms of like the Maslow hierarchy game, which is like hilarious because they teach that in flight training as like so they call this the practical psychologist.
Why do they
call
teach
flight instructors practical psychologists because you have to understand like some of the fear patterns that people are dealing with and the learning patterns. So you go through a series of like really basic psychology learning, and Maslow's hierarchy is like a big part of it. So,
Interesting.
anyways, it's so funny because I'm like learning about Maslow's hierarchy as I'm getting ready for these tests, and I'd seen it before, so it's not like I'm learning it for the first time.
Right.
But I started like looking at it, and it's the top of it's like fulfillment and whatever, like some sort of spiritual life or who knows what it's supposed to be.
Right.
But I started looking at all the lower things that build up to that. I'm like, don't have that, don't have that, don't have that. Like, my life had mostly been dismantled.
Yeah.
So I'm like sleeping on couches and getting ready, and I'm like, so this is the worst possible state to be in to take these exams.
Right.
But instead, I flourished, and I was like, okay, fuck Maslow's hierarchy. There's some other things going on here. But so I'm sleeping on couches and like trying to figure out this whole thing, and a friend of a friend calls me and he says, this guy I met at an AA meeting has a place for rent.
Yeah.
So okay, like cool. And I called him up and he had a really, really weird kind of discussion with me about like my relationships.
Huh.
So there was a lot of signs at the beginning, but I was sort of desperate and the price was good.
Yeah.
It was like 1/3 of the rent of a normal place.
Yeah.
And
what were the contexts of the questions?
It was sort of like,
are you gonna expect company or like?
He was like, I just want to make sure you're not a ladies' man. This and that.
Okay, that's not terribly.
It's not terrible.
That's fair.
And I'm like, okay, that's really far from who I am. So like, this is fine.
That's fine. Yeah, that's not a red flag to me.
It wasn't at the time, but then at the end, looking
for
back,
sure, when you're like,
oh,
where are the signs that this guy was fishing
for being a fucking weirdo?
Yeah.
Anyways, so, and I ended up being fairly devoid of relationships during my time there, which may have just been like a timeline of my life or whatever. Who knows what the actual functions were.
You dated that chick that was a piece of shit too.
I mean, I've dated many. Anyways, that's kind of why earlier when this got brought up, I'm like, oh, I'm going into a pity party because I was like,
a lot of bad memories right in a row.
Well, they're all like, I don't have a lot of or any relationships that like ended well.
I don't know if I have it. I don't know if they've ended well, but like they've ended on terms where we were like, this isn't worth like walking away from a friendship. Like, I'd rather have you in my life. Like, I went to an ex's wedding. We still talk all the time. I have another ex that I still talk to regularly. But I would say
it's probably common not to end a relationship well, so I'm not like...
Most of my relationships, I don't think... I don't speak to most of my exes anymore, but it's by their choice, not by mine.
Well, yeah, same.
I think a lot of women like to do the scorched earth approach after they've decided you're not going to be their husband.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to move on when you don't have any, like, triggering...
Well, they also have more options, so it's like, whatever.
Well, for sure, right? Men are the buyers and women are the sellers.
Yeah, so fine. I don't care, but...
Or maybe it's the other way around. I think it's the other way. Men are the sellers, women are the buyers, and it is a buyer's market.
Yeah, who knows the allegory? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyways, so I rent this shed.
Yeah.
It's a converted shed. It's 8 by 12? 8 by 12 shed.
Teeny tiny.
It's literally a box with one window.
Yeah.
It's not clever. It's a box with a window, and like you can hardly fit a bed in the correct direction.
I have a bedroom in my house that's 10 by 10, and it's not unlivably small, but it is. There's a house around the room.
Yes. So it's weird in that, I mean, part of it is I had to build a bed custom fit.
For sure.
Which is fine. I like building things. So
yeah.
It's like wasn't debilitating. In fact, it was kind of fun to build things.
I like doing that too.
It was very creative.
I had to do that when I was in San Diego.
I enjoyed the whole process.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so this is cool. And there was an attached bathroom that didn't have a door, so I had to leave the unit to go into the bathroom, which was fine also.
Attached bathroom that didn't... Oh, okay.
So the door was exterior, so I had to leave my...
Got it.
My 100 square feet to enter.
Got it. Okay.
But it was right there, so
right.
I don't care. The only weird thing
was... Did it have
was...
a shower?
Yeah. Okay. Shower, toilet, sink.
Cool.
Yeah, normal, kind of normal bathroom. It was small, but it was fine.
Kitchen?
No kitchen. So, but I mean, it's $700 a month, so...
That's expensive.
Not in LA.
Oh, is LA?
Yeah, well, Long Beach.
Okay.
So, anyways, he had converted his garage. He lived in the garage.
Huh.
And the garage was right next to the shed.
Okay.
So, we're next door to each other by 10 feet.
Okay.
So, super close. And I used his living room, which was just he set it up as a studio, but he also had the washer dryer and the sink in there, so I
Okay.
had to do my dishes in there.
Sure.
So it was very much like a combined space,
Yeah.
and I didn't care because he's like old and 70 and
Oh.
yeah, he like whatever.
I
And
thought it was like 50s or 60s.
no, he's a super kind guy, like really giving and
Yeah.
and whatever. So I was like, okay, this is fine. Like I have no problem with this. I'll make this work.
Yeah.
And actually, I was very happy there for a while, and then COVID happened, and I stopped going to work because I was worried I was gonna kill this guy.
Yeah.
I was like, ah, fuck, I might actually kill this guy.
Yeah.
So I better stop going to work. And also my parents. I wanted to see my parents, and I'm like,
Was he still charging you rent?
mm-hmm.
That's kind of fucked up.
I mean, whatever. I don't really like throw a fit on anything. I just go, this is how it is. I'm gonna continue
Sure.
living. So whatever.
Okay.
I didn't really try to create a fuss.
Well, it's like you stopped going to work for him, but he was like, I'm still going to tap you for rent. And if he's in his 70s, I'm going to assume that house is paid for.
I think he was still reliant on the income.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't well set up.
That makes
Which
makes
is why
it
he
less
converted the
of a-
garage
yeah,
and rented out
that
the
makes
house.
more sense. Okay.
So it seemed like he wasn't. Like,
he was
really
he
set up.
was trying to not need to like have to ask for unemployment or something or like lean. I guess he's already on Social Security.
Yeah, so he's kind of beyond.
Yeah, there's no other real options.
I don't
for
think
him.
he had a lot of money, so I didn't. Anyways,
That's the fucking Ghost of Christmas Future shit that scares me.
yeah. I didn't evaluate it. I just said, this is a situation. I have to stop working. The government is supposed to like pick up on this and provide for
Totally.
me, and they didn't end up doing that, which is a bummer. And
You
so
didn't get unemployment?
No, I didn't get unemployment.
I'm a bad person because I got unemployment and your boy probably didn't need it.
Yeah, but which is fine. Like, cool. Okay, you get your luck early on in life, and then you have to pay for it later. Whatever. That's a karma thing. That doesn't matter.
I don't think that's how karma works.
Well, yeah, I think it's more finite than we believe.
I think it's inter life. I think it's
Well, I think it's both.
okay.
So, anyways, I could talk like 3 hours on karma. It's not super.
That's why I'm triggering you.
Um,
Trying to stretch the story out as long
this is becoming a longer story than it needs to be. But that's fine. So anyway, I'm living in this place, and COVID happens, and then, at the same time, I like lose my most cherished relationship with Michelle,
Yeah.
and
Is
kind
it
of,
bad that I
falling
keep
apart.
calling her like a shithole and like a?
Oh, she's terrible.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, she like.
Just wanted to double check that.
I mean, it sucks when you fall in love with somebody like that.
Yeah, because they
You
can
know?
ruin your life.
It's like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's like not your choice. You're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
fuck. Like here we go.
I've gotten real close to one of those, and it's tough because you're like, fuck, like yeah, this person could end me, and they don't have a lot of control over their life.
No, they have the least amount of control.
Right, so it's like I'm
Yeah.
putting my heart into the hands of somebody that like doesn't give. I don't know if they don't give a fuck, but like they don't know what to do with power.
Yeah, I think she was actually debilitated by the fact that she was destroying me.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's something at least.
I mean, she cared, which sucked, and I think she realized ultimately that it had to end because she
Yeah.
was going to be the harbinger of my destruction.
Sure.
And it was like the longer that she kept up with it.
Was
And
she like making you like use or something, or like what was
Use?
the like drink
No.
or like?
No, I had been sober for a long time at that
So then,
point.
what was it? Was it just like the fact that she like wasn't committing?
She was emotionally manipulative without understanding that she was.
Oh, interesting.
And
She would just like say shit that you didn't know the answer to, and would like make you question like how she felt about you.
well, like so this is the best example I can use. Like we were together, exclusively together that I know of.
Right.
I had decided that, but I have no idea what she was doing. Like that was part of it. Is she would disappear for weeks.
Right.
In terms of communication, I don't know what she was doing.
Right.
And then it's like all the signs that she was having these other relationships. So, but I never got any closure around it. But who cares, anyways?
Right.
It's like at the end of the day, it's like okay, she was being terrible, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
So she was doing these kind of things where she'd disappear, and I'd be like, okay, so this isn't that important to you then, because you're gonna disappear and not talk to me.
Right.
So I'm not important to you.
Right.
And then she would be like, no, you're like one of the most important people in my life. It's like,
Right.
well, you're not making any actions that say that.
Right.
in fact, you're making all the actions the opposite, so your words aren't matching your actions. So it's very
Right.
confusing. But we had a really deep connection, so it was like that made up for it, in a way.
Yeah.
But it was still very frustrating and difficult and whatever. It wasn't like she wasn't like torturing me intentionally. She was just
No, but she would like disappear to like deal with her own shit.
Yeah.
And then like wouldn't talk to you about
right.
it.
And then there was no
yeah.
communication about her having her own problems.
That's brutal.
Even though I was very open about my situation.
Right.
And I was kind of like, if this is gonna work, like I'm like 100% vulnerable and you're 0%.
There are people like that though, like they just don't have communication skill sets and also crazy big walls, and like
Yeah.
they just don't. It's not like they're not letting people in. It's that like they don't let things out.
Right, and I think one of the most healing discussions about this, Jordan Peterson was talking about like malevolently irresponsible people.
Yeah.
Like they are malevolently irresponsible by nature, and that's just
Sure.
how they are, and they're wandering around the world. And hurting
Podcast
people.
1, talk about Jordan Peterson. Let's get into it.
And I was just like, oh, okay, that's good. Like at least some reason for it. But I already come to conclusion on that, so it wasn't like a revelation. Oh my God, Jordan Peterson knows the secrets to the universe.
No, but
well, that's a good description.
For all of the misgivings of Jordan Peterson, he is incredibly articulated,
Yeah.
expressing emotional volatility that I find to be very refreshing.
Yeah.
He chooses words very responsibly, which I appreciate.
Yeah, agreed. So this is happening, and to bring back my original point was the biggest metric on, and in fact this is sort of longer than just this one metric, but it was she couldn't say that we were in a relationship for a year.
Fuck. Similar situation for me, where somebody was kind of stringing me along, or like they were like actively seeing somebody else.
Oh.
And
Well,
like,
I mean, here's the other side, not to step on you. But
no, not this is your story.
the
I'm
other side of
stepping on
it
your
is
shit.
like, I didn't like we like had a whatever fell in love at first sight type of situation, which is cool and like yay movies,
Yeah.
but also like practically not awesome.
Right.
And I went to her apartment like after the third or fourth time that we actually went out on a date, which was later than the actual relationship. It was like we started dating after. It was all backwards. Anyways, so we like went on a date, and I brought her home one day, and this woman came out of her apartment with a dog, and she greeted the dog, and she immediately became distant with me, and then that person was really mad at me, and I was like, oops.
So you came out of her apartment?
No.
Or you're going
this woman
into
came out of her apartment. I'm like hugging her to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And it's like a very intimate interaction. You know, like it's like visibly intimate.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I can draw my conclusions. It's like there's obviously something happening
There was
here.
a thing.
And she just casually walked by with the dog and looked over, and this person's immediately pissed off at me, and then she's greeting this dog, and I was just like, oh. I was like, oops.
Was she giving you like a dirty look? Or like,
Oh yeah.
You the dirty look? Like
yeah,
you did something wrong?
And I was just like,
That's fucking like I get like the instinct to be mad at the situation, but like I wouldn't let her touch my dog. You know what I mean?
Whatever. I don't care. I didn't care much about this person mad dogging me because that happens all the time. I don't care. But what was crazy was we had the intimate bond that you could like feel.
Yeah.
And then immediately this person walks up and she's a different person.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this isn't good. Like,
yeah.
there's something happening there. And this is her home. I was like, oh my God.
She's like chameleoning back and forth in real time.
Yeah.
That's so fucking
and I was like,
weird.
oh no, this is really damaging for this person.
Fuck.
And I'm in the middle of it, of course.
Fuck.
So, but you know, by extension, I'm gonna get damaged.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, whatever. That story's kind of longer than the point, but anyway, so she's living with her ex.
Yeah.
Or something.
So they were living together? I thought they were neighbors.
No, they're living together.
Fuck.
I learned that later. I'm
So
like, I don't know who this person is, but then eventually I learned that they're sleeping in the same bed.
Shut the fuck up.
So they're sleeping in the same bed, and she's now having this not relationship with me, where she's madly in love with me, and I'm the same.
Are they? And they're not poly. She's not communicating any of this to her. Or she's just actively cheating, and like, presumably the girlfriend is like used to this, like it's happened before.
So none of it ever got communicated fully, so I actually don't know what the full situation was.
That would be a nightmare. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I actually I don't know what was occurring there. At some point, I was really.
Like, I'm sure you've come to terms with that, but like,
yeah.
on initial reveal, my internal feelings are like, I just have questions.
Yeah. I was very curious,
Yeah.
and I was, diplomatic at the level that I could be. I was sort of like, you have to tell me about this.
Yeah.
It was sort of like
Yeah.
like for your own sake.
Right.
You have to tell me about this.
Right. I can't.
Not for me.
I can't gallivant around your apartment assuming that I'm not, actively participating in you cheating on your girlfriend.
Right. And and there's other layers to this that made it all like she was working with me. In fact, she was a direct subordinate to me.
Shut the fuck up.
So it was like it's a pile. It was like really
that's
gross.
I've been so scared of that situation.
And
that,
again, it's like I didn't choose this.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like it's the whole thing. Like if you were to review it externally, it was sort of like, wow, you guys are fucking disastrous.
Hot mess.
And I'm a hypocrite. Because I'm like,
you're gonna turn off the oven. Keep talking.
I'm managing other employees who are doing the same thing, and like saying you can't do this, and in fact I'm doing this. I'm this massive hypocrite.
Right.
So, anyways, it's like my favorite description. This guy, Vishen Lakiani.
Okay.
Kind of like eccentric type of guy. He's young, but he's kind of wild in his ideas, and he has this idea of the beautiful destruction. Is what he calls it, which I kind of like. Is it's this beautiful thing that's just like tearing the fabric of reality in your world, which is quite necessary for whatever is occurring in your life. And I'm like, well, this is what that is. It's like here's this amazing, beautiful thing that people rarely experience. I fed the cat.
Oh, you did. Thank you.
And yet it's like unraveling both of our lives. So this is sort of the context of my internal state.
Right. At what point did it start to fall apart?
The relationship?
Yeah, with you living there, like timeline-wise.
Oh, timeline? Not like situation? Probably like 6 months into me living in the shed, she began pulling away.
Okay. So a while.
Yeah, it was it was probably like the honeymoon phase was, I don't know, 4 months.
Did she ever come to the shed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she did. But that was when we were phasing out and not very intimate.
Got it.
And she was like grappling with demons and eventually like kicked out her partner.
Whoa, okay.
And
when that happened, were you like, maybe now is my time to shine?
Well, what was the crazy thing is she called me one day, and it was like one of those times where they call you and you feel the badness about to occur. And you're like, oh, this is going to suck ass. And they don't have to say anything. It's one of those, we need to talk. But she didn't even need to say, we need to talk.
Yeah.
I just picked up the phone and I was like, shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, can you come over? And I was just like, fuck. So,
well,
and
at least she invited you over to talk.
Well, anyways, this is, I don't know, this is maybe it's the purpose of this discussion, but it seems like outside of it because it's sort of in line with the discussion.
It's all context.
This is the same woman, she's lesbian, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like...
The girl she's dating, she's a lesbian, or the girl you're dating is a lesbian?
They're both lesbians.
Well, she's bi if she's fucking you.
Right. She's bi now because she's fucking me.
So you were the first guy she ever... Really?
Or, I think she did when she was 16 or something. She hinted at some experience when she was younger that seems like it may have scarred her to relationships with men.
Got it.
Anyways, that's like a whole other thing to unpack. So... So, anywho, I'm lost where I was.
Falling in love with my dog, that's where you were.
That sounds nice. So, whatever, that's falling apart.
You went over to her spot.
Oh, yeah, she's breaking up with me.
Right.
And she's crying in her bed. And I'm like, alright, let's get it over with. I've been through this. You obviously haven't been through this long, but I deal with this often. So like, let's go.
I'm a black belt in heartbreak, bitch.
like get the emotions out.
This is gonna be good for my blog.
It's like I'm gonna have to go for a run, so like hurry up. it's not that emotionally distanced, but it's kind of like that.
No, you're like, I'm on a schedule.
Well, it's like I see the fucking light, you know.
Yeah,
like,
you're like,
you
don't need to waterboard me with my own breakup.
Like, I know this is gonna suck.
Right.
I know how close this is.
Right. Say what you just say to get closure, but there's nothing that you're gonna say that's gonna be like, cool, that makes this feel like better.
And it was so bizarre because she wouldn't even acknowledge that we were in a relationship. So how is she breaking up with me?
Right.
So
what did she say? Like, how did she phrase it? She was like, I can't see you anymore? Or
I don't actually remember.
She was just like, this is terrible for, like, was it all just about her? She was like, I can't deal with this?
Yeah, she was like, I can't, like, I have whatever. I honestly don't remember the conversation because it wasn't that important. I already knew what was occurring. And I was like...
It was just kind of, like,
I don't remember.
Almost.
It wasn't shocking to me, honestly.
Well, but shell shock is more just like you're just kind of like standing there as things are vibrating around you.
Yeah. Well, it was very much her world, you know.
You're in her apartment.
I was a passenger on the ride.
Right.
Know?
I feel that.
And that was the whole situation. Like the whole time, it was just kind of like she had her world, and she could meet her entirely how much I was involved with it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I don't care because I'll take whatever I can get, which is pathetic. But also, it was like I felt like I didn't have a choice. It's like you set up the conditions where either I say no to this experience, which people rarely get in a lifetime, or I, you know, and sort of allow you to manipulate me.
Yeah.
But I was like consciously allowing it. I was sort of like, I know you're manipulating me, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And that was destroying her. And it was like it was up like front and center. It was like, I know you're doing this. And she
that's
like,
interesting too, because it's like, if you have a level of like involvement in it, then they can't feel power from kind of tricking you.
Yeah, there was no. It was like,
if you're like, hey, we both know this is terrible for me, but like, let's fucking go, baby.
So yeah, whatever. Like, anyways, so yeah, so she said some sort of string of like incoherent emotional things that were like, this needs to stop.
Yeah.
And I said something like, are you sure that's what you want?
Yeah.
And she said something like, I don't know. And I'm just like, okay, you need to figure that out, but I need to leave.
Yeah.
So I left, and I'm like, it's over.
Yeah.
Because clearly, it's like, if you don't know that you want to be in a relationship with me, this is clearly not happening.
Yeah.
And the fact, like, there was one experience, and I'll remember this experience forever, because it totally encapsulated the relationship. We were, like, hanging out at her apartment, and she's, like, cooking dinner or something, or making smoothies, and I'm, like, falling in love with the fact that she's making something in the kitchen. You know, it's, like, one of those stupid fucking country songs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is a fucking real thing. Like, how bizarre that this is a real thing. And then she is messing around in the freezer or something, and she half turns around, and she says, hey, babe, and she stops. And I was like, she was about to say babe, and she couldn't do it. And it was like her natural thing was to say babe, but she wouldn't let herself do it. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. I was like, oh, like this
back to back.
It was like right next to each other, and I was like,
God was just like, here's a little bit.
I was like, oh,
fuck.
Like, wow, this is like crash course.
Yeah.
It was like straight up crash course. I was like, oh.
Did you just like stand up and leave? Like, what was the fucking? You're like, strawberries, I guess.
I mean, I was as speechless as she was.
Fuck.
I was like, oh.
That sucks.
Yeah, it was like the whole thing wasn't great.
Yeah.
I mean, besides the, you know, it was.
I've never had love cock teased before. That's brutal. Like, I've never had blue balls for falling for somebody.
Yeah, it was fairly damaging, and whatever. This is what I'm talking about, is like when you bring these kind of things up, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a really sad story.
It's fun.
It's well, no, and that's why I was like, I really
hope it's okay to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. It's like I've been through it, and whatever, process it to a degree that is like not gonna bring me to the same state of despair.
It's not like a trigger.
So it's probably better that I expose more of it.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not trying to blame this person either, right? It's like,
no, but to the point you were making earlier, like there are some people that are just like fucking tornadoes.
yeah.
And they are blowing through people's lives.
Yeah,
and
and actually,
the house.
towards the end of it, I actually like sympathized with her much more than blamed her for the situation, because I was like, wow, like what would it like? Not to minimize my situation, but if she truly loved me the same degree that I loved her, which I'm not sure if it was true or not. It's like I might actually have loved her more,
Sure.
possibly. And who's to measure? Like, how could you possibly measure? So who cares? But this is like the evaluation.
By how much you eat their ass, I think.
Yeah,
I think that is the bottom line.
I
I really mean it. If you haven't eaten their ass, you don't love that person.
Anyways, so yeah, I got to this point where I was just like, and it was so bad. Like, I was feeling like shit.
Yeah.
On top of that, I realized in, I don't know, not a noble way, but in like a healthy, if they could call it that, in like a healthy way, I realized how much worse she must feel.
For sure.
And I was like, that made me feel even worse. And I was like, what a fucking pile.
Well, that is how she felt when she was making you feel bad too.
I know.
So it's just this like.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally a pile of despair.
Yeah.
And it's like the more that I, recirculate it, it's terrible. So yeah, that's like the emotional context of the situation. It's like,
right.
Lee wants to jump off a bridge.
Lee's balls, his heart balls are as blue as can be.
Yeah. And, it got worse. It's like that wasn't the end of it. It just kept getting worse.
Oof.
And
that wasn't the end of it?
No, that wasn't the end. No.
Good lord.
Of course not.
That would have been at least
that would have been
closure.
Enough. That would have been enough.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the end. And
I have that. The funny thing is, there's a moment where I remember I was getting like lost in thought for a second where you were talking, where I was like, there was a moment for it to have bounced back when I was going through my shit, and then I just fully shit the bed. And it was awful, and it was like, if I had just been a better person, like that could have worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. It's tough when like, yeah, you're aware enough of like your own faults, but not good enough about like stopping yourself from making dumb mistakes.
Yeah, you're aware but incapable.
Yeah.
That's a trap. That's like,
right.
That's fucked.
Yeah.
Which it's like,
and I either want to be better or dumber. Like I don't.
Yes.
I don't want to be in this
Precisely.
entropy of like of incapable intelligence.
Right. Yes. Ugh. So, we don't have to get into the rest of it because it's just more like despair and terrible things.
Sure.
And whatever. It just gets worse. So, around this time, it's also COVID.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm like have lost the love of my life, and now I'm isolating myself. It's like good pile. This is great.
Yeah.
Good timing. So instead of, and I don't do this often. It's not like I encounter difficulty and I go, okay, crush me, world.
Yeah.
It's like I wouldn't be alive if that was the case.
Right.
It's like the world would have crushed me by now. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let's. What do we do now? So I got really involved in AA, and I was going to a lot of Zoom meetings, which is like not ideal, but it's something.
Better than nothing. Yeah.
And I really got into the system and the program that's associated with it, and began reaching out to a lot of people and developed a lot of close relationships.
Good.
Ironically,
That's the best thing you could have done at that time.
yeah, I mean, it was perfect, and it was also the most painful experience emotionally that I've gone through,
Sure.
just because it's like, not only are you like digging up all this past shit, but
Yeah.
it's like literally like, okay, there's a big pile of shit. I'm just gonna add all the other shit.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm gonna fucking suffer, like, let's get it. Let's see the level of suffering that's available to
To me, it's not like you were adding to the shit. It was like that you were finally saying like, I'm gonna take inventory of all the shit that's in my house.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, oh, there's new shit in my garage. You were like, where's all the shit in the house?
Yeah.
And then we'll see what's the biggest, most important shit to get rid of first.
So so it was just kind of like, okay, now we're dealing with everything.
Right.
Like, this is the time we're going to deal with everything.
Right.
And of course, I wanted to do other things. Like, I was really trying to get into programming and wanted to help my brother with some projects because he was
I remember that.
He was coming out of a black hole too, and I was getting excited about it, but I couldn't do it because I was dealing with all these internal things.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like a conflict of I don't call it improvement, but it's not self-improvement. It's just kind of like
self-actualization.
Yeah, self-actualization versus like
just cleaning house. I think self-improvement.
Okay, well, yeah, I was kind of constructing it differently, but that's a decent way to put it. It was like utilize the time to work towards something you wanted to do, or utilize the time to work on something that you really would rather just keep in the closet but should be taken.
Yeah, so I think self-improvement versus self-actualization.
Yeah.
Right? Like the difference between, like, I guess, a career or self.
Yeah.
Or internal happiness.
And then COVID dragged on way too long. And I got some money from like PPP, I think.
Yeah.
And then I got a loan, and immediately just started using a business loan as my capital for living.
Yeah.
So I just like made it work.
Yeah.
I was like, this is fine. I make it work. And to some people, this I don't tell this story often because I don't think it's that important. Because I'm not trying to like prove anything, but a lot of people, when they view my life, they think, oh well, he's always had something to fall back on. He's got a family and he can go live with his parents and yada yada yada, and like they have money and they're willing to give him money, and it's like he doesn't have to deal with risk. So that's why he's risky. It's like Lee's risky because there's no actual risk.
Right.
Like, okay, cool. So and I mean, of course, there's some portion of my motivation that causes me to go, I'm going to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and it's debilitating in the sense like the Supreme Court thing. It's like he's trying to prove everybody wrong by being a fucking asshole. It's like, don't destroy life because you're being judged. So
for reference, Clarence Thomas reverting or being in the front of a Supreme Court overruling of affirmative action because he didn't like the fact that people thought that he became a Supreme Court justice because of affirmative action.
Yeah.
Removes the potential for anybody else to be able to utilize affirmative action with the type of ability that gets you to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. So whatever. It's kind of a similar thing. Like, I don't necessarily identify to the degree that he's having it, but it's like
for sure no. But like I also think that the desire to not to own the consequences of your decisions.
Yeah.
Is admirable.
Yes. And how much of that is actually true because the supreme, like the ultimate difficulty is not quite there.
Sure.
It's an undertone that exists. It's like, yes, of course. If I actually
the fear isn't real.
Like when I end up in a hospital, my parents come save my life.
Right.
And that's
they
a
show
true
the
story.
fuck up. Yeah.
That's a real thing that happens.
They're there, right?
So it's like, all right. So like it's there. It's like I can't deny the fact that there is some kind of benevolent force living in this world that knows I exist.
But that's a good
shows
thing,
up, and it's good,
right?
yeah.
Like that's a wonderful thing. You don't
I
need
agree.
to prove to anybody that.
I know, but it's still like this conflicting undertone where it's like don't discount my ability because
right.
And it's like, okay, so that exists, whatever. That's kind of like a side thing, and like a sort of reason why I can do some of those. Like, okay, what happens if I don't make it?
I get I used to get really salty with my oldest brother because he would say a lot of things that were very to the point of like I've kind of rise and grind my way to the lifestyle that I have.
Yeah.
And I have to, I guess with many of my brothers, and I have to constantly like check myself from being like, our parents granted you a lot of mistakes and they helped a lot, and they covered loans, they like they inherited loans. I guess without getting too personal, it's just like there were a lot of instances where, or not personal, but I guess talking about other people's shit, but like there were a lot of instances where they very much like covered for somebody else, and I just remember at one point my brother being like, "I'm a self-made man," and I was like, "There's nothing wrong with acknowledging and thanking the people
Sure.
that helped you for getting where you are."
Well, I have not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you,
No.
I actually have a belief system that nobody's a self-made anything.
Right.
It's like, how the fuck could you possibly do that?
Right.
In what capacity are you self-made?
And also, like, your parents work super hard, I mean, especially if they love you, to give you those advantages.
Right.
So take advantage of them.
Yeah, and that's sort of a separate conversation. But anyways, it's some kind of like hovering cloud in my world. So
I get it.
It kind of influences a lot of.
Well, I also think that you took a lot of chances to live a lifestyle that was inherently risky for a bunch of reasons, and so like to then be like, well, I got to take these risks because like I get that that fear of being like, I wanted to be able to take those risks and then not have to have my parents bail me out for
Right.
them is like it's a very reasonable
Yeah.
and empathetic way to try and like get through that.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's like a level of undue burden that you put on yourself.
Sure. 100%.
Right.
Yeah. And whatever. Something I'll probably continue to grapple with
For sure.
for however long I live. So yeah, I'm having this whatever, completely broke, quote unquote broke, and still paying rent because I'm like, people have to pay rent.
Right.
It's part of living. You have to fucking pay rent. So you keep paying rent, pussy. Like, figure it out. You know, it's like limitation is good. It's like rise and overcome.
Right.
So, and there was a portion of this experience where I'm getting really involved in these meetings. I'm going to like 7 or 8 a week or more, I forget, and having obligations involved with the organization and whatever, and not wanting to devote this much time, but there being some kind of pull towards it. And so he's in it too, and so we would like go to meetings on Zoom together. And so I'd go in there and we'd hang out in his little living room and we'd do whatever and we'd meditate together and whatever. So like, and it's at one point, and I didn't see the writing on the wall because it didn't make any sense to me. I was totally naive to it. This guy's like, this is going to become a very intimate experience. And I was like, I took it as, okay, we're going to have a friendship that becomes more close. I'm like, I understand that. Like, duh.
Yeah.
I sort of reacted, duh. And he was like, great. So he's excited about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whatever. Like, obviously, we spend more time together. Like,
Yeah.
what am I, stupid? Like,
Yeah.
why didn't you say that? So I just discarded it. So like, why didn't you say that? And so we spent a lot of time together during COVID. It's like, what else do you have to do?
Yeah.
Watching stupid videos or whatever. Like, go eat ice cream in there. It's like just stupid shit. It's like not significant things at all.
It was a bigger space too.
And he had a TV.
Right.
I didn't have a TV. There's no space for a TV in there. So
Right.
like, he'd be watching something interesting and I'd go watch it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I'd spend 15 minutes and I'd leave. Or I'd spend an hour and I'd leave.
Right.
And I didn't place any emphasis in those experiences.
Sure.
It was just like me trying to escape that little fucking hut.
Totally.
And so I'm like, okay, different location. Good.
Right.
And I had built a kitchen outside, an outdoor kitchen, and a little garden, and I was doing stuff outside. We
Nice.
built a bigger deck in the area, so I was like hanging out, and I was surfing a lot. But that sort of ended too because I hurt my shoulder.
Yeah.
So I like couldn't surf anymore, which was a big source of peace and comfort with the universe.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things got taken from me.
Yeah.
I mean, in a privileged sense. I mean, it wasn't like I was being fucking forced into an internment camp or something.
No,
But it was like it was
in a
difficult.
time where like you didn't have a lot to kind of get out of, like not being home was a real blessing.
Yeah. But so all this stuff's happening, and I'm sort of overwhelmed and trying to fix whatever I am, and kind of reinventing who I'm going to be, and developing a conception of reality in a lot of senses that is different than what I had before, or some sort of like evolved version. And this guy's doing weird shit, and I'm not even paying attention because he's being weird. And he's a weird guy, so he's being fucking weird. I'm like, whatever, be weird. I don't care.
What is he doing?
So one of the weirdest first things that he did after this is going to become intimate. I don't remember if he said relationship or experience or what word he used. I don't remember. Friendship he might have used. So he might have used a really neutral term, which is likely what he did. Diplomatic. And one day I go in there. This was the weirdest fucking thing. It's hard for me even to say.
Okay.
Like, because it's just so fucking weird. And I couldn't respond to it. I was...
So you just jerking it or something?
No. I walk in, I sit down like I normally do, probably with a cup of coffee, and I'm sitting there, and whatever, he's fiddling with something, and he's like, I had a weird dream last night.
Okay.
I was just like, uh-oh. That's never a good thing when somebody says that.
Did like the hairs on your neck stick up, or
it was kind of like that. I was like,
Okay.
It's like, this is not
just the way he said it, you were like, oh no.
And I might have even said, you don't have to.
Okay.
I might have even said something
What was his body? Like, where was he? Like,
he was standing faced away from me at his bed.
And you came in, you were in his bedroom?
His bedroom and his living room is the same space.
Right.
It's a garage.
Right. Okay.
Just one open space with a washer, dryer, sink.
So he said that he wasn't even looking at you.
No, he wasn't looking at me.
Okay.
But then he did. To tell me what he was talking about.
I just got uncomfortable.
Yeah,
like the way he's like that made me like my whole body just got like a horror movie, like a jump scare.
Maybe I need to leave, and I was just like, what the fuck could he say? Like, what could be so heinous that he could say?
Okay.
And he said, and I don't know the exact words, but it was something like, he was like, I was whatever laying in bed, and it was really magical ambiance or something creepy. He's saying it in such a weird way. It was like, that was like gross. I was like, I don't need to hear this from a 65-year-old man. And I'm just like, and like nothing against like old men looking gross, but like you get old, you look kind of gross. Dude.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm 25.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not. There's no.
Oh, he said he was talking about you.
Oh yeah, he was like, and. I don't think it was this blunt, and I think he led into it a little bit more, and he's like, I was eating your asshole. And I was just like...
And he turned and he looked at you and he said that?
Yeah, he
like,
turned and looked
at me. What point did he make eye contact with you?
I didn't make eye contact. I remember him looking over, and I was like, no. Like,
good.
This is not the
you
time.
You don't want that memory.
Like, we're not making eye contact.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then
he hadn't said anything even close to that.
No, this was the first thing.
And he just came out swinging.
Just came out full ass.
So he loved you. He really loved you.
Yeah. Right. Perfect segue. Fantastic.
Fuck. Okay, so you burn the house down and you leave.
No, because I'm an idiot.
No, I know, but
so I'm sitting there and I'm just like,
what do you remember? Like, because you said he wasn't as blunt as I was eating your ass out, but like
he had like a lead in. There was a story behind it that I wasn't paying attention to.
It was like when I was serving a nom.
No. He was just like he was telling about the story and the whatever, the scene and the things that were occurring and whatever, and then
I was watering my plants and I was staring through the window and the cascading light down onto your hairy chest made me wonder how the water glistens down to your gooch, and I was wondering what it would be like if my tongue got to lick that up.
Oh no, he was describing the actual physical sensation that he was licking my butthole. Like, it wasn't that he was imagining licking my butthole.
He was writing like a fucking like
he was dreaming that he was licking my butthole. He was literally having a visceral dream about licking my butthole. My butthole. Not a butthole, my butthole.
Lee's butthole.
He made that clear. I was like...
You're like, I'm a ladies' man. Man, I don't know what to tell you. I
actually don't remember the words that I used after, because I sat there like... I said something like,
fuck.
I don't think I could be gay. I said something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think I could be gay.
Yeah.
I just don't have that.
But also, dog, I'm not starting with like a melted wax figure.
And also, like, here's some more context, which is probably more important, but maybe more poignant now.
Okay.
Is like, so he would often buy me food because he was
Okay.
worried about my financial status.
Sure.
So whatever, I don't care. You can buy me some fucking cheese every now and then, or some milk when I run out. I don't give a fuck. But instead of saying, I bought you some food, come grab it, and send me a text, or knocking on my door,
Yeah.
he would just walk in to the shed.
Yeah.
Which is, like, if two people are in that shed, you are intimate.
Yeah.
There's no space. You walk into that.
Is he a big guy?
No, he was like hunched over and, you know, like.
Okay. He's like 5'6", 5'7".
Yeah, maybe. Probably
Teeny
less.
Guy. Teeny guy.
He was like an ex-overeater, so he was like thick.
Okay.
And he had gastric bypass or something, so he had solved it in some.
So that's extra skin.
He had a lot of skin.
To just okay.
A lot of skin.
So he knows his way around skin.
Mm-hmm.
He would know what to do with an asshole if he were to get his hands on it.
Yeah, and
that is so unsettling.
Well, I mean, not only is it like unsettling in terms of the.
I got so creeped out when you like my whole.
Dude, I had nightmares.
Before you had even said what he had said, just the way you talked about his body posture.
Yeah, it was.
And the way he turned and like. I was like physically, my whole body was like in like a fight or flight mode.
Yeah, and that's how it felt, and I was just like, and I played it off because I was like,
thank God this guy's not like a predator, or like, you know what I mean? Like he didn't poison you. Or,
yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Yeah, if he was more malevolent, it could have ended bad.
Could have ended a lot worse.
Yeah, there could have been some sort of. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was actually a decent human being.
Right. He
was
just was a creep because he didn't have any game.
Probably repressed and you know, whatever. Like
I've seen American Beauty. I know.
I haven't seen it, so.
Well, sorry, spoilers, bitches.
But so anyways, and you know, there were other things that I realized post, like, I guess that wasn't the first thing. There was one day where I remember where I came in, and he didn't say it bluntly enough for me to be like, you can't say things like that. But he said, like, oh, do you just wake up like that? And I was like,
so this is becoming like an office, like where a boss is like hitting on an employee.
It's like sexual harassment.
Yeah. And you're like, he hasn't quite rubbed your shoulders at the keyboard yet, but like it's very much like if there was an HR, you'd be like, we need to have a chat.
Yeah, and also like the sort of bizarre thing about it that allowed it to keep going is I've had one woman in my life hit on me.
So you just like have no context for what it's like
to have, clue what
to be like flirted with,
to have someone actively pursue me.
That's really funny.
And so I'm like,
so you're like this is.
It's like that stupid meme with the guy and the butterfly.
Yeah. Is this friendship? And it's like sexual harassment.
Yeah. And I'm like, so I'm a total idiot, and of course, like, I've definitely never had a gay guy hit on me.
Yeah.
And I've definitely never had a gay old man who's my landlord hit on me.
I've had I'm not humble bragging, but like, god damn it, have I had a lot of gay dudes hit on me, and they're persistent, especially when they're younger too, because there's no greater activity I think for gay men than to try and successfully transition a straight dude. That's the most dangerous game for them.
I know, and I don't know if I'm a little bit too far from their purview or just not in their circles or something that I didn't experience.
The gaming industry that I work in is just chock full of gays.
Oh yeah, and I'm in masculine worlds.
You're in like Pilot's World,
which is a boys club, and scuba diving's a boys club,
right?
And like engineering's a boys club,
right?
So like
I'm in a different kind of boys club, but they got boys.
Yeah,
they got lots of
boys.
They get the boys are free flowing in it. Sorry, B.
Yeah,
in a different way.
Yeah, so whatever. I'm quite naive to all of this, and also I'm sort of tied into this place. I like living there.
Yeah,
the situation's cool.
And like, who knows what it's like to get your asshole eaten? You know. That's not off the table yet.
It sort of was. It wasn't sort of what is. It was off the table, and I expressed that. I was like,
I would hope so, Lee.
Well, you know, I was like dumbfounded at first, and then I was like, you know, I'm not. I don't think it's possible for me to be gay. I didn't say I'm not gay.
But also, like, I think he would die. I think he would have a heart attack from excitement.
Maybe, yeah. I don't think it. Yeah.
It's easy for me to make jokes 'cause I don't know what this guy looks like. I don't know. I didn't have an intimate relationship with him.
You know that turtle from the Disney movies that's kind of old and he stands on 2 feet and wanders around.
I thought you were gonna say like, you know. Oh, you're talking about from. You're talking about not Master. Is it Master Shifu? From
He has a
Kung Fu
cane.
Panda. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Anyways, kind of like that.
Yeah.
He looks like a turtle.
So he looks like Mitch McConnell.
What?
The
I don't know who Mitch McConnell is.
the
The voice actor.
No, he's a senator.
He's
Not.
a senator.
Oh! Yeah.
Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
No, not really. But
Like a
close.
saggy neck
Yeah,
situation.
but yeah, kind of like that.
Okay. Brutal.
Yeah. Anyways, not yeah. Whatever. I'm not trying to judge people's appearance too harshly,
I
but
mean, unless they're trying to eat your asshole.
and I have to be like this is. But it got to a point where I was just like, you realize this will never happen. It was
So
that
how
definite.
many? What was like the second and third instance after he was like, you just wake up like that? Like after he like was like, all right.
That might have been the first thing,
I'm
and
gonna-
then the next thing happened,
Okay.
and then the
So
eating
he
asshole.
turned on the game and he was like, cool, let's keep heating it up.
And I was like, okay, like this is a boundary.
Yeah.
Like there were subsequent conversations where I said, this is a boundary that you should not cross,
Okay.
right?
So you made it like you vocalized like you're making me uncomfortable.
Yeah, like very clearly, like this is gonna affect the way we interact with each other.
Yeah.
This is a boundary. It was
Yeah.
very definite. I wasn't using any sort of indirect language.
Yeah.
This you can't cross this. Our relationship is now like harmed by what you've done,
Yeah.
and
If we meet this boundary again.
like I can't spend more time with you now
Yeah.
because you've done this.
Yeah.
And also, you're my landlord,
Yeah.
so you have power,
Yeah.
and this isn't an okay thing to insert into that.
Yeah.
So you've overstepped in so many areas that this needs to stop, or like I need to leave.
Yeah.
Right? It was like that, and he was fucking devastated about it because his
You guys
fantasy world
didn't
was
get to
going.
fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, his fantasy world is like ending,
Yeah.
and he's still sort of ignorantly like invading my personal space every once in a
Yeah.
while, and I'm like, or like I made you coffee, and I'm just like I don't want it. Get the fucking message.
Yeah.
But I was like, trying to be cordial and not a total fucking asshole.
At a certain point, though, it's like dog, like knock.
Well, yeah, and I said that. It's like now I need to lock my door, but he has the key, so it's like
Did he use it?
don't remember.
All the drugged
but it was
coffee,
like-
your memory's fogged.
But when you know that somebody could be predatory
Yeah.
and they have a key to your place,
Yeah.
and you're having nightmares about it,
Yeah.
it's like this is like totally fucking your psychology.
How long were you there? Like, how many months after he exposed that he was interested in you?
Maybe like 3.
Long enough. That's a long time.
It was a long time,
It's a
and I was
long,
trying to
long
create
time.
options out if he
Yeah.
didn't resolve the situation.
Yeah.
And he pushed it off and kind of like played it down, which didn't help because I'm like, you can't play something. You have to face this kind of thing.
Right. You need to actively acknowledge it, apologize for it, communicate how you're gonna act differently, and
Yeah.
start acting differently.
And he sort of didn't do those things.
Yeah.
And it didn't get better, but it didn't get super worse. And then 2 months later or something, I'm like, gotta find a new place. This is a
So
problem.
you actively were like, this
Mhm.
is.
But I had to get my ducks in a row. Like I had the van was
Yeah.
parked there, and it was not running. The not running van that I wanted to live in was parked there,
Yeah.
and I had my other car there, of course, that I used for doing things.
This is crazy. You never told me any of this when this was happening. You came down to San Diego. You helped me pack up my shit and move. And
Yeah, it's probably the same timeline.
you never told me any of this was going on with you.
Probably not.
No, you didn't. You told me about the van. You told me where you were living. You never told me, like, the guy. I mean, I'm sure it happened. When it happened, you were, like, just focused on getting the fuck out of there.
Well, I take quite a while. I'm sort of
You had,
What do you
like,
call it?
processed what was going on. Yeah.
I late process things, and I think that is a really good survival.
For
instinct.
sure, yeah.
It's like so when calamity occurs, like
The last thing you want to be doing is, like, did my dog just yell?
No, that was me. I whistled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last thing you want to be doing when everything's catching on fire is like, how is this going to affect me mentally?
Yeah. So, and I mean, it gets pretty far delayed for me.
Sure.
So when it's occurring, I'm like process. I'm like dealing with it as a practical thing and need to figure this
I think I'm
out.
the same way. I don't.
And and especially if somebody like one of my closest friends is moving,
Sure.
it's like they're having a difficult situation. I have plenty of outlets to talk about this. So if and I think you were dealing with court situations too at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm so much not the help me,
I commiserate over shit though, so like I don't know.
There was enough
I
in our
appreciate.
interactions
I
to talk about.
appreciate it. Yeah.
So it's like
And I don't ever feel like at any point you were hiding anything, so it's not like
yeah,
that.
it wasn't like that.
I'm just. That's just a lot. And
I was also just so baffled by the situation.
Totally.
That I didn't know, and it gets better or worse. So later, when I started talking about it, like he started that thing, and I was like, this is fucking weird. But also, trace occurrence, maybe he's just like lost his rocker one day. I gave him a little bit of leeway on the fact that he could have just like
fully lost his shit.
And whatever, blurted something out because he's senile.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, he's old and difficult, and he's having trouble too. His dad's dying. He's taking care of his dad, whatever.
How old was his dad if he was in his
really
60s?
Old and really bad shape.
Fuck. I mean, imagine like if this guy's like not doing hot. And
his dad's like 94.
Greatest generation, motherfucker. This guy served in World War II.
He's having to wipe his ass.
God damn.
So I'm like, I gave him a little bit of grace, and so then one day I walk in to do the dishes.
Okay.
And so there's the garage, face, and then there's the door to the garage, which is on the corner, and then there's the garage door on this other wall, right? So there's the garage door that opens here, then you have the wall that we kind of share, and then you have a door there. So I would always enter through the man door to the garage. So, and it was almost always open, and I don't go in the door if the door is closed.
Yeah.
Because that's his space, and I respect it. He wouldn't respect my space, but I was trying to like show him, like, this is how you respect space. So, and if it was closed and I really needed something, I'd knock on the door.
Yeah.
So the door was open, and I went to go do dishes or something, holding like a bowl of cereal or something. And I walk in the door. He's standing, facing me next to the sink, which is right next to the door. It's convenient. He's standing facing me, and I'm like, looking eye level, but he's looking down. So I'm like, okay, now I look down. He's peeing in a bottle in front of the sink, facing the open door. And I go, oh fuck, I'm sorry, and leave. Because I feel like I violated a boundary.
Was he wearing clothes?
Yes. Yes.
And was there a bathroom?
There's a bathroom 5 feet away.
Behind him?
Well, it's outside. Then you make a left, walk 3 feet, and that door's the bathroom there. So he could easily walk 3 feet and pee in a toilet.
And he didn't stop peeing while making eye contact with you?
No, it got worse. So I said, oh, fuck, I'm sorry, and I left. And he said, like, verbatim, and I remember, Lee, you have to get over yourself. And I fucking lost touch with reality. I was like,
what does that even mean?
I didn't respond because I had...
Did you keep walking away?
Yeah, fucking...
Yeah,
good.
good.
I went and sat down in my room, and I was like...
Is this a mating routine for him? Like, and he thinks I just turned him down, and now he's defensive?
Like, I was even more baffled than I already was.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that is
I was like, wait.
Bizarre.
And I was like, is this my fault?
Jesus Christ, Lee.
That's what I mean. It's like, that's what I mean. I lost touch with my sense of direction in the world in that moment.
That is like, well, I guess that just speaks to, like, sexual trauma, right?
Like, he was waging psychological warfare.
Well, what I was saying, though, is that, like, that is, like, the number one story you hear from victims of sexual abuse is the first thing they say is, like, the first thing they say about how they felt afterwards is, like, how this was their fault.
Oh.
It's incredibly common. That is an incredibly common theme. And that's why so many victims don't say anything.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're incredibly ashamed and embarrassed, and they figure out how it was their fault.
Yeah.
How did I put myself in this situation?
Yeah.
How did I...
Who knows if it was more intense if I would have taken hold of the fact that he was being a total fucking creep.
That's insane.
It was, like, objectively sort of mild sexual harassment.
Sure. But,
know?
like, for what he was capable of, that's about as far as he could take it.
True. Yeah. Right.
Like, without physically coming into contact with you,
right,
exposing himself to you, and doing it in a way as... Do you think he planned it?
How could I know?
Yeah.
I tried not to evaluate it.
Sure.
I was sort of like...
I gotta think that's happenstance, and then he was, like, offended that you thought you saw his dick, and then he was like...
But who would, like, pee in a cup facing an open door during the middle of the day?
I think that was probably... Like, he could have had... I know that there is a psychological condition that some people have for urinating in jars and keeping it.
Oh, okay.
So that could have just
he would dump down the sink immediately afterwards.
Exactly. That could have just been a ritual for him.
Which also added to the strangeness, because I didn't know he was doing that, and that's the sink I wash my dishes in.
Yep.
And I was like, that's kind of not okay.
I mean, that could have been a combination of factors. That could have been a thing he'd been doing for a while. That could have been a thing that he was doing because it was just faster and more convenient than going to the bathroom. Regardless, the reaction was... I think that could have also just been embarrassment from him, and he was masking it with, like, a defense... Because that's the kind of shit my dad would yell out when he couldn't think of anything to say.
Yeah, right.
But, like, he was in the wrong.
Yeah, and, you know, later I realized, I'm like, okay, this is gaslighting.
Yeah, well... Because gaslighting... Yeah, I guess it depends.
Oh, it was like, you're crazy, I'm doing something normal.
For sure. Well, for me, gaslighting is, like, when somebody convinces you that something didn't happen the way it did, rather than like misinterpreting.
Oh, I see. Okay,
it's a subtle. No, I think it's a subtle distinction. That it's why I think people use gaslighting as common as they. It's like, you know, using the word like toxic for relationships and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just become like a common psychological application, and I don't think it's so far off that it's like improper to use. But from what I've understood gaslighting to be, it's like you get in a fight with somebody and you're like, you called me a bitch, and I say, I never called you a bitch.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And then I construe this other story about the like actual narrative that happened, as opposed to
invent a reality.
Yeah, as opposed to like, this is how that should have been interpreted.
Sure.
But
okay, fair point.
But I think it's subtle enough that like there's gray area for sure.
Well, and I don't know any of those things because again, I wasn't that exposed to these sort of behaviors at all. So this is all like new and confusing. And then, you know, I gave enough space for things to simmer down and let emotions settle. And then I walked in and the door was open still. So now I knock on the door even if it's open.
Yeah.
Right. So now I knock on the door. It's open. And he's upset that I'm knocking on the door now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Greg, look, if you're gonna pee in your place and I'm gonna walk in, I don't want to come in and
see your dick
peeing.
Yeah.
And it's not about me at all. In fact, I'm concerned that I'm violating your space. So I'm trying to respect your space.
He's like, I want us to share space, and you're like, I don't. And
I don't want to watch you pee.
Yeah.
So like, I kind of care because you're peeing in the sink I do my dishes in.
Yeah,
so
that's
like,
not great.
That's something you should have told me you're doing.
That's awful.
That's a terrible thing that you're doing, and like gross. And the fact that you're hiding that and we're able to hide it this long just speaks to how gross that is.
Yeah.
And also, like, the series of events that led up to you doing this is... Come on. Really?
What did he say?
And he was like... He said something... He said a few things that I got confused by, but one of the main things he said is this is not unusual. Ask anybody. And I said, you know what? I will ask everybody I know. And he fucking backpedaled like a motherfucker.
That is the best thing you could have said to somebody that's like a sexual predator. Because the other go-to they have is like, and you can't tell anybody or you're gonna look bad. And you're like, I'm gonna tell everybody. And he's like, no, I'm gonna look bad.
So he was like,
is that gaslighting to be like, this is normal? I don't know. I need to read.
It was fucking with me.
That's fucking insane.
And you know,
to be like, here's a playing field that I'm establishing rules for.
Yeah.
To be like, you're not allowed to feel the way that you feel.
Yeah, right. And then immediately as he's backpedaling, he's like, oh wait, like you can't ask women. And I'm just like,
what?
I was like, I don't give a fuck. Everyone's gonna think this is weird. And like, it does not matter.
Dog.
The gender does not matter.
You're
is wrong.
pissing in the sink I wash my dishes in.
Yeah.
And you told me it wasn't a big deal after I saw you pissing in a bottle. When there's a bathroom right there, you're a grown-ass man. You don't have any debilitating diseases preventing you from walking.
Yeah.
And your door was wide open.
The whole thing. And
your reaction to that should have been, sorry. So wait, how did you find out what he was doing?
What do you mean?
Did you see him pour it down the drain? After you walked in on him pissing in the bottle.
Oh, no, I asked him about it.
And he was like, oh, I pour it down the drain.
And I pour it down the drain.
Did you say why?
I don't know if I even asked.
I mean, yeah, that's a crazy question to ask.
I couldn't even ask because he was assaulting my reality.
For sure.
He was like, you're crazy.
For sure.
And I'm doing a
You're like, I didn't even have time to break down.
I couldn't even evaluate.
Yeah, he was trying so quickly to get away from, like, why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
And like, making it very personal.
Yeah.
I wasn't taking it personally.
No,
it was, like,
he's trying to
intentionally making...
That is some...
And it was like... And
that is gymnastics manipulation.
It was, and honestly, it was totally out of character too.
That's even scarier.
Right? So I was
spent
like,
6 months with this guy. Like,
well, I spent longer there.
Well, 9 months. You said you were there for...
I probably lived there for a year total.
Wow. So you started acting wily at like 9 months.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Again, there were signs that I wasn't picking up on, but.
Did you tell anybody in the AA group?
I don't. I told my sponsor.
What did they say?
Really fucking cool dude. You know, he was totally on my side about it.
For sure.
But he also set aside his viewpoint. He's like, okay, like, and a very close friend too. And we're very close in many different areas of life.
He's like, dude, you don't understand how delicious your asshole must look. So
no.
To us normies.
It was like, we surf and we fly and you know, like we hang out and whatever. So we're like very intertwined in a lot of different areas.
Sure.
And he said something along the lines of, you know, I wear a lot of hats in your life. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he's like, so I'm gonna put on different ones for this conversation. Something like that. And I was just like, that's perfect. Like, it's exactly so. And you know, he's like, first I just want to sort of react to this. As your friend.
I love this guy. I don't know who this guy is.
That's fantastic person.
That's an amazing thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to take a minute and just, what the fuck?
He was like, not cool.
Yeah.
Move out. Not okay. You know, like,
okay.
boundaries are crossed.
This guy's great.
Not cool. And then, you know, he took a bunch of different viewpoints as one person, which was really great.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, he had a lot to say about it.
That's awesome.
And then at the end of it, he was just sort of like, I don't see all of what happens there, so you're gonna have to make your own decision, right? And he's like, I support you anything you do, but man, that's fucked up.
That's insane.
Like that's how it ended. He's like, that's fucked up.
Insane, yeah.
That's some fucked up shit.
That's some fucked up shit.
And you know they also interact.
Yeah.
Within that same kind of bubble, and I decided not to tell other people because it's a very gossipy type of.
Well, for sure.
Group.
Yeah.
It's it's like it's gossipy. These people are fucking raw.
Yeah.
You know, these people come in and like.
Yeah.
So whatever. I decided not to.
There are a bunch of interpersonal, incredibly painful details about my life.
Yeah, exactly. So I sort of separated from that world because I knew that I could destroy his world by inserting that. So I was like, oh.
That's how you get assaulted for realsies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So when I went and asked people, I asked like my childhood friends.
Sure.
You know, who operate in the real world.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like, okay, I know this is gonna sound.
They're like, you're living in a shed. You're like, we're not there yet.
Yeah. It's like, I have to talk about something. It's gonna sound really fucking weird, and I'm kind of losing my shit over it.
Did you tell Cameron?
Yeah. He was one of the first people I talked to.
What did Cameron say?
It was almost the same reaction. Everyone had the same response. They're just like, "What the fuck?"
Not one person was like, "Yeah, you're acting crazy."
No, not one.
What if that had happened? What if you
I'm
told a bunch of
crazy.
people and they were all like, "Yeah, I piss in front of my buddies all the time. It's whatever." Like you don't have.
I mean,
what do you do with your bottles? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
peeing with
where
your
do you
buddies
pour your pee bottles?
in a urinal, no big deal. Like peeing with your buddies out in nature, whatever. The goofy things.
You don't make
guys
eye
do.
contact with your friends while you're pissing into bottles in the same room and then pour them down the sink that you all do your dishes in.
Also, we're not friends, me and this guy.
Right.
So it's like
You and your estranged grandfather don't know what the color of what each other's urine looks like.
yeah. So yeah, everyone had
Wild.
the same reaction. Of course they did,
Wild.
because it is a crazy thing to think that's okay.
Totally.
And I was like, okay, good, I can still live on this planet. Great.
I'm gonna eat some of your yogurt.
Go ahead. So that was sort of the culmination.
How far into this are we? Hour and 15 minutes. This is the longest video I think I've ever taken on that cell phone.
So that's sort of the culmination of this whole disaster that was that, and but not just that. So now I'm actively trying to escape this area, right? I'm actively saying, okay, I can't live here anymore. This isn't okay.
Yeah.
I've tried to set boundaries. They weren't respected. He's now actually attempting to
Do shit.
discredit me.
Yeah.
Discredit like what is okay to do in the world. And I had to have a, we live in society conversation. Like I was talking like a child. Like,
Yeah.
we live in a world where people have certain interpersonal customs that we uphold for a reason. Like there's a reason why we aren't just all fucking and peeing and shitting in the same place. Can we acknowledge this?
No, that's what we all do. You're crazy. What are you talking about?
And it's like, okay, I understand that you want to live in a fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I get it. You want to lick my butthole. You want to pee wherever you want. And I don't know what the rest of the story is. And frankly, I don't want to.
So what do you say?
And he said he doubled down. He doubled down on the whole thing. He said, that's not true. And I was like...
Which part? You need to go beat by beat here?
And I was like, oh, so this is not a useful conversation for us to
Right.
have.
Alright.
Understood. I understand. Okay, I get it. We're gonna change this conversation.
We're gonna pretend now and do whatever needs to happen for us to not ever talk about this, I guess.
Right.
So that I can get the fuck out of here and you can go about doing whatever it is you need to do.
Yeah. And, I'm putting my ducks in order and trying to be, I got the van running to get it to fucking move and whatever. So
Was that like a crazy moment for you
Which one?
when you got the van running?
Oh, no, because it's like, how many times have I got the van running? 20 times.
No.
So, it's well, that's not true. It's a crazy moment every time. I get very excited. I'm like, it's running again.
But I mean, like, when you're like, cool, I can get away from the asshole liquor.
Yeah. And I had, the timing was actually perfect, if you can call it that. Because I had just gotten the hangar in Compton. And I was like, I'm going to move in my hangar. It's like I romanticized about moving in the hangar.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm going to move in the hangar. This is great. And I'm all excited about it. And, I decided not to give him warning on when I was going to leave.
Good. Smart move. Very smart move.
So, and I sort of started getting everything ready.
Did he know that you were trying to get the fuck out of there?
He noticed at a certain point
Okay.
that I was getting shit in order to leave. Right? Because I had started neglecting things like the garden. I started disassembling certain things. The van started to move and do stuff.
Yeah.
It started to fill up with things.
Yeah.
So there was like obvious signs, and then
So this guy is like, he's got a head on his shoulders.
yeah. I mean, he's renting his house,
Right.
and interacting with people,
Fully like
and is
cogent
involved
and-
in
yeah,
the community.
right.
He's taking care of his dad.
So this guy can move around.
Yeah, and drive a car.
Okay, that makes him less. Because I've kind of been picturing like a Weasley old man that's like, I don't know, not really capable of doing anything like imposing to me. But
I mean, he's a human. He wasn't strong enough to overwhelm me.
Well, no, but like the idea that somebody has faculties, and the point you made earlier, access to your sleeping, like.
Oh, he very much could have assaulted me.
That's what I'm saying. Like the story I was telling you earlier about my friend who had just was like trying to rent out the extra room in her apartment.
Yeah.
Guy comes over. She shows him the spot. He's like, "Oh, BT Dubs, I have a felony charge for carrying a weapon that's unlicensed."
He told her that?
Yeah. She's like, "Fuck."
Was that a strong arm move? What is that?
That's because he's about to move in. It's probably going to show up on his background check.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
And so she's like, that's not great. He leaves. He texts her a couple of days later saying, like, hey, we should fuck, basically. She doesn't respond. He pulls up to the house and she runs inside, calls the cops.
I wonder what he said.
I've been telling her what, like when he texted her.
No, when he showed up.
He didn't say anything.
Are you deranged?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you pulled up somebody's house.
What the fuck?
She knows. So now I'm like, he knows where you live. There's no way you're ever gonna feel safe sleeping there. You need to leave.
Yeah.
I'm sending her Texas state statutes, being like, you can break the lease without consequence here. You have a police report.
Oh, she's not leasing from you. She's in her own place.
She's in her own place.
Oh, good. Okay.
Real estate agent is giving her shit though. Is like, you're gonna have to keep paying rent until we find somebody else. And she's like, I effectively have a stalker here. Suck my dick. I'm moving out.
No,
but she's like not great. She's not stoked about it either because her family's living arrangement is not great.
Yeah, not ideal.
So she doesn't want to go back home. But I'm like, there's just no staying there.
Yeah.
He knows where you live. You're not gonna feel safe. Knowing somebody might have access to where you live, it's like that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So fully empathize with that.
Yeah.
And it again, like, I was taking the piss out of it a little bit, but like, yeah, the idea that somebody could come in, like, I woke up the other morning and it was the middle of the night and I had hung like a t-shirt on a lamp.
Oh.
And I had one of those where I like fully like almost shit my pants.
Yeah, I know those.
Fear. And then I was like, well, it's the best thing about having a dog that barks at anything that moves is like, I immediately was like, Ika would have woken me up if anything even come close to that.
Yeah.
So I was immediately able to be like, there's nobody there. But yeah, if I didn't have that,
yeah,
I would be fucking.
Yeah, I had a fat cat that could hardly jump on the couch.
Like, I remember one time I dropped my brother off. This was years ago. We had gone to a concert. He drank way too much.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare. We were trying to leave. He ended up, like, we needed to go back to get him at one point. We were trying to beat traffic, so we left early. He had no way of getting home, so we had to go back and get him. I was mad at him. I'm racing home. He doesn't like that I'm, like, kind of speeding. I was going, like, 5-10 miles over the speed limit. And he like, screams at me to pull over on the side of the freeway. I'm like, fine, fuck it. So, like, I'm trying to, like, get to an ramp. He's like, no, pull over the shoulder. And I was like, okay. So I pull over. He reaches up in between the seats and rips the e-brake. And then comes out of the car. I put the e-brake down and I drive away. He left his door open and closed. And then I just left him on the side of the freeway. And it was one of those moments where it was really not a great situation. He walks to, like, the nearest gas station, calls his girlfriend. She eventually comes, picks him up, drives him home. He comes back. This is when we were still living together. And he comes to open my door, and my dog's at the foot of the bed. She starts barking at him like crazy. And it was like a very happy dog moment. Like, dog owner, I was like, you want to fuck with me? It's going to be like you and my dog ripping you apart right now, dog. Like, but it was also nice because it was like an imposing moment. He, like, opened the door and he's staring in the shadow. And I just remember my dog's barking at him. And he just stares at me, and I just stare at him, and my dog is, like, fucking going off, and I was like, fuck yeah. Like, I love you so much, baby girl. Like, she can be scary when she wants to be, and it's been, it's nice to have that shit, that level of security when you're not sure about it, but I'm very protective of my sleep, too, so I can't imagine how that felt.
Yeah, and I mean, this is in the midst of some of my most debilitating sleep problems, too. So it's like, here's the file, which, again, Like, that was the beautiful destruction. Although that part wasn't very beautiful. It was just disgusting.
Yeah, that's pretty... Well, it's, to be clear, it's disgusting because it's somebody, like you said, in a position of authority who was also, like, in a, basically, like, in a therapy group with you, so to speak, right? Like, in a position where they have intimate knowledge about your life, and you're supposed to be working together for self-improvement. And then on top of all of that is, like, just, yeah, they have access to you. That's not great. But on top of all of that, it's like the interdynamic. Like, I've told you, even when I'm, like, attracted to somebody that's older, it's hard.
Yeah.
For somebody that you're like, I find you physically repulsive to be coming at me like that. It's just a brutal amalgamation of things.
Yeah, and I don't want to be shallow about somebody's appearance, but man, you're on your way out. Like, I don't want to be crude, but does your penis work?
But, like, I mean, if he just looks like a bunch of, like, hanging towels, if that's his skin, you know what I mean? It's like,
it's interesting to me that, like, his fantasy was to eat your ass. You know what I mean? Most men fantasize about things happening to them.
Well, he elaborated too.
Oh,
Like yeah, whatever. It was gross, and he did a similar thing with the pee thing when he talked about the ass eating. I was just dumbfounded,
What did he
not
do?
talking, and I think some of the next words were like, "Is it so wrong for a man to fantasize about pleasing another man?"
He said that when, like, he was peeing?
No, he said that after he was
yeah.
talking about licking my butthole,
Okay.
and because I was like,
Dog.
so he talked to, like, break the silence, but he talked worse.
Yeah, he just kept saying,
Like,
more horrible
this is
truths.
okay.
Yeah.
And I was like,
You're like, we can either stew in this, or I can just keep
I
at
got
it.
no problem with people licking my asshole. It's not about that.
It's just this guy. This
The whole
specific guy.
situation was like, this isn't okay.
Yeah.
This isn't okay. And oh man, it's so bizarre. There was one other occurrence where I forgot to knock. The door was open, and I saw him peeing again.
Yeah.
And this was like late stage, like I know I'm leaving the next
Yeah.
week. So
Yeah.
and
Did you just, like, go and wash your dishes? You're like, I'm just power move.
no,
and, like...
I did the same. It's a jerk reaction. It's like your program.
No,
to be
100%.
like, to went, oh fuck, I'm sorry. Like
Yeah.
that's all that comes out. I don't even think about it. It's just, and I leave.
What a piece of shit, dude.
And he did it again. He'd like tried to play the same game, and I was like, this isn't cool. And then I'm getting ready to leave, and it's like the second to last day, and
Yeah.
he feels like this is his last chance or something.
Oh boy.
And
So he took it. He shot his shot.
Yeah, he took a shot.
Oh
and,
fuck.
And it was gross, and I don't even remember what he said because I was just like, he started to have this thing, and I was like, and I know how he feels because I've had weird situations that got in the way of me wanting to start a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
But I knew that the situation was too big.
Yeah.
And I respected that. I respected the situation because I knew it was like near impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some interactions are strong enough to overcome it. But there's been moments where I'm just like, you know what? This is okay to let this one go.
Yeah.
But there's a grinding feeling that you want to say something for your own closure, selfishly.
Totally.
Right?
You're like, I'll feel like a pussy
if I don't.
If I don't. Like, I need to know that I can say something rather than, like, this isn't about you. This is about, like, when you're...
So I knew how he felt.
Totally.
And he started this thing, and I was like, don't go there.
Yeah.
And I had this disgusted face. I was just like, don't.
Yeah.
I was just like, don't.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
It was very much like down, like very gritty, you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, all of the body expressions that I could do to say, like, stop.
Yeah.
And I have to leave if you start this.
Yeah.
And he just fucking did it anyways.
Ugh.
And honestly, I don't remember what he said because I was so repulsed by it that I just, like, didn't want to take any of it on. I just like, put up a blockade, and I was like, dude, it's just not gonna happen.
Did you say anything to him? Be like, you're a fucked up person.
No, I didn't say anything. I said, don't do it. This is wrong. Like, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
I gave him all the chances to not fucking do it.
The frustrating thing is that somebody like that is gonna be like, oh, he's just homophobic.
Maybe.
Like,
I don't care.
That's
honestly.
so. Well, to me, that's like I would want to say something just so that he didn't have some kind of like way to weasel out of it later.
Well, there was
Like,
no influence I could have, clearly.
well, for sure, right? Like it's again, like it's more for my the same thing I was saying earlier, like in the reverse, where it's like for my own state of mind, I need you to know that I at least said the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like, you need to know that I'm not attracted to you, not because you're a man. Like that is part of it, you know, at least in your situation.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm not attracted to you because you're a man. It's because of all of the reasonable reactions to having seen you intimately in gross situations, the fact that you have power dynamic over me, that we have like very little in common, the crazy age gap,
Yeah.
like
It's like, make a list, dude.
like yeah, like I could talk about this for an hour and a half about all of the reasons why I have no interest for us to ever be physically intimate in even any slight capacity.
Yeah, and I don't even have to invite the context of my life into it.
Right. Be like, I could meet you at a bar and I would never in a million years be like, oh, I'm bummed out I didn't get to fuck that guy.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
like, so in what situation do you think this is okay?
right.
There's literally like
All you're doing is creating shitty memories for me for the rest of my life.
like this is the story I'm gonna tell.
And I need you to know that if you could, if it's better for you to have the memory of telling me this, that the exchange ratio is me thinking that you are a disgusting fucking person for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it totally soured everything. And again, this is a genuinely like kind and giving person.
Sure.
And I like that's how I was like, oh, you know, when the first time I showed up, I drove up and I'm whatever semi-homeless, whatever you want to call that.
Right.
You know, I don't know what people call that. You know, people are grandiose about it, but whatever. It's like you're in between living. You're in between. Is what
Houseless.
What's that?
Houseless.
However you want to describe it, I don't really care. People have too many labels for things, but
They do.
I show up. I'm in a distressed state for a lot of reasons. This is my initial interaction with this guy, and I walk into his backyard. And I'm like, oh man, this is a really peaceful place.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. Like refuge. This is good. This is a good feeling to have at home. And I sat down and I was like, oh, this is very peaceful energy. This guy's cool. He's a little bit weird because he's got these weird things about women, which I don't know what that's about. Maybe he's just aged and he's living in a different generation or maybe he had somebody who was like over abusing and having.
Yeah, I mean,
over.
if somebody said exactly, if somebody was like, I don't want you like running through a bunch of chicks through my backyard, I would be like, I guess that makes sense. If somebody like stole from you, or you just don't want a bunch of strangers around like that, that seems super reasonable.
Yeah, so I didn't even read into that at all.
Yeah.
I just said no problem, and also I was like, that's not even gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
Just because of like the way I live my life, I don't have a lot of interaction with women, anyways.
Could he like see through your window in your shed?
No, the window's on the other side.
Okay, good. So how did he say like you looked so peaceful this morning or whatever?
Well,
just, like,
I went in to have coffee.
Oh.
I went in and he had a coffee maker and I had a French press and it was dirty or something. And I said, fuck it, he always has coffee.
Yeah.
So I walked in and got a cup of coffee because it was tired. Like it was a super weird situation.
Okay.
And I was just like, I popped in and I was like, hey, you have coffee brew? And he's like, oh yeah, have a cup. You know, like super friendly, no problem type of thing. Yeah. And so like a lot of the experiences were like that, where it's just casual and normal and like I'm not inviting any sort of thing. So whatever, and so yeah, like the initial first impression I have of this person is like kind, giving, peaceful. You know, maybe in a little bit of a weird place in his life because he's aged out and he didn't plan well.
Yeah.
Big deal. I was like,
what's going on with the rest of the house? It's like a
the rest of the house is a nightmare. It's a weird cycle of people. There was a couple in there that broke up a few times, so they're kind of volatile couple.
They yell at each other like loud? Or?
Not particularly.
Okay.
And they were decent people. They were just not in a good spot in their life.
Sure.
So they're like having this situation in there. And then there's like another room that kept cycling through people. And eventually towards the end, his adopted son ended up living in the house as well. So it was going through a lot of people. And so
Did you
it
ever
was
talk to the adopted son?
not really. It was too late stage.
Yeah.
Like the adopted son showed up after the weird situation started.
Yeah.
And so I was like needing to distance myself from the situation.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm not opening up to anybody else about anything that's happening here.
Right.
And in fact, I didn't tell anybody else in the house what was happening.
I would be interested to see how the son would have reacted if he had known. If he was like, this is...
It was too much too.
No, dude, I think it's not about like what makes sense. I think it's more just like, it's such a wild fucking thing to try and normalize doing stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Because of the level of repression that must have been going on for him.
Right.
For like stuff like that to be taking place and for him to be able to like sexualize some of it. The peeing thing is weird though. Like I don't know if that's a sexual thing or not. Like I think that's just
peeing is a sexual thing for some people.
It is, no, for sure. But I mean like the way he was doing it, like it feels more like somebody that's like, you know, like how people can be like hoarders.
Yeah.
Or like
it felt that way.
That kind of behavior where it's like he's just been pissing in the sink for so long.
Right. And maybe he started because he didn't want to infringe on the person living there's bathroom.
Maybe. Yeah, exactly.
But, dude, there were other things, like, and I didn't think about it until now. Like, one time, I was unclogging the toilet or something, and we had to have a conversation about pooping in the toilet, and he talked about pooping in the toilet quite often, you know, like toilet paper use, because the toilet got clogged a lot, because he didn't plumb it right.
Right.
Because he built a shed, and then he decided that he was going to put somebody in it.
Right.
So he didn't plumb it like to code. There was actually an instance halfway through this experience where I had to completely unpack, like disassemble the shed because a city inspector had to come in because he had a tout with his neighbor.
And they were like,
they were like somebody's living in his backyard.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, and I'm just sort of like, oh, okay, I'll just disassemble the shed.
Yeah.
But when I did it, I looked at it and what I had created, my living space, and I was like, I literally just undid my living space because of a pissing match.
Yeah.
And then what was the craziest part about it is that he's living in fear over this.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to. I'm a renter. I'm paying you. And he's saying, you need to. And I was sort of like, dude, relax. Like, we're gonna work through this. Like, it's gonna be okay. And blah 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 blah. I was like, oh man, this is a lot. On top of everything else.
Right.
And
is this post him being weird?
No, it's before. This was before
Okay.
it being weird. But this is just like me remembering some of the sort of things that were difficult about the situation. And I sort of looked at it like, man, that's depressing that I had to just disassemble my life. You know?
Totally.
And he gave me a break on the rent that month or something. So it was like, this was fair. We're going to move on from it. I'm not going to like hold a grudge. And the inspector came. He walked in the backyard. He looked at the shed. He's like, okay, cool. See you later.
Brutal. Were you there for it?
Mm-hmm.
Why were you... what did he say your relationship was for you to be there?
Oh, there was no questions. It wasn't even... The guy barely even talked to us.
That's wild.
I know. And I was like... It was just another lesson for me that I was never, ever in the rest of my life, it was like boom, solid proof. I'm like, I'm never fucking living in fear.
Yeah.
Because it tore this guy apart.
Yeah.
And then he tore my life apart.
Yeah.
On top of my life, like, he knows my life's falling apart.
Right.
And then he does it too, just because of his own fear.
Right.
That I'm going to get kicked out of his place and it's going to affect his income. I'm like, you fucking asshole.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I wasn't mean about it, but I didn't realize till afterwards that he was being so fucking selfish about it.
Yeah.
I was just like, come on, dude. Like, really? Come on.
What did he do? Was he just like, this needs to be done like now?
Yeah. He was like, you need to disassemble your place by Friday.
I would be like, I'll pack up my stuff.
Yeah, and I'm very agreeable. So I was sort of like, if that's what needs to happen for me to continue living here,
Sure.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
And I made all the arrangements to do it. And I was, at that
What did
time,
you do to disassemble? Was it like take apart your bed frame and like?
I basically, and I had, this is 100 square feet or less. So I had built in there a lot of apparatus, folding down tables and things strategically placed.
Yeah.
There's pictures on the wall and
sure.
There's storage from surfboards or whatever, and
But all of it.
It was a living space. It looked like a living space.
Right.
And my cat lived there.
Yeah.
So it was like, you've got to be creative to fit a cat and a guy in one place that's 100 square feet. So I built a lot of intricate things to make this happen, and so it was sort of like
a
take it all down
situation.
Yeah, it's like, okay, take it all down. And I'm like, if that's what I have to do, I will do it. I will do it to keep living here because I don't have much of another choice.
It's an incredible effort.
It was horrible. Yeah. And so it all got disassembled. And
I wish you would have told, because I would have been like, just come live with me in Texas, dude.
Well, I had a job.
That's true.
So all of this was before the COVID situation.
I'm flying Texas up here.
And no, I loved my job.
Yeah.
The swap of experiences, it was like the biggest high-low I've experienced probably in my life. That's not maybe true. I don't know. Emotionally, it was some of the biggest highs and lows I've experienced, where it was sort of like, finally got a job I like, I got the girl, I got the whatever, and honestly, I was living in a state of happiness that was like, everybody around me was soaking in how wonderful I was.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is fantastic. If we could all live this way, it'd be great. And then it was just like,
yeah, all inside of it. It's like the first 6 months were bliss, and the second 6 months were just
absolute hell.
That's crazy. Well, I mean, yeah.
And well,
sport.
I don't know if I can call it hell because people live in worse ways, but
perspective's a bitch. I think the more you try and contextualize how your shit's not as bad because somebody's got it worse, that's life.
Yeah, sure.
Your worst can be your worst, doesn't it?
So, whatever. There was a lot of situations like that, and it was difficult, and then, the result was I went and lived in a hangar alone.
Was it air conditioned?
There's no water.
How did you survive? Just a van?
No. Well, yeah, so originally I parked the van in there and I was sleeping in the van. Did I have the airplane there? When did the airplane crash?
You crashed?
Mm-hmm. My student damaged the airplane.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I never asked what happened to the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
It was your airplane too? Like you owned it?
Well, I technically don't own it anymore. I sold it to my dad.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, owned the airplane. Well, because I started my own business. Because then I got fired from my job, which I loved. We'll call it ideological dispute.
Got it.
They changed their business model from. It's kind of a funny situation because I was getting both my helicopter license and my airplane license at the same time, in the hopes that one thing was going to work out, knowing that airplanes had a little bit more financial mobility.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in a place to say finances didn't matter. So I needed the money at that point, and I had sunk a decent chunk of change into getting the licenses. So I had to recoup some of it. So I decided to focus a little bit more on the airplane route because there's just more money in it.
Yeah.
So I was training at this school in Torrance, and I finished all my courses, and I had this, what they call a check ride, for a sport pilot instructor license, which was the same hour requirements as my commercial helicopter license.
Mm-hmm.
So both essentially entry-level position qualification, and they were the same hour requirement. I'm like, well, this is kind of strange. I took those two tests in the same week, which I thought was also crazy. And at the school where I was taking the airplane test, the owner of the school was administering the exam. It's technically not a conflict of interest, but who knows? And he was so impressed by how well I prepared for the exam, how well I flew, that he offered me a job at the end of the exam.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, hold on, let me think about it. I have this other job, right? So I want to consider, and we should do an interview, and yada yada. And then a couple weeks later, I was surfing nearby in Torrance somewhere, and he called me, and he's like, you want to go get lunch? So I showed up in board shorts, and we had an interview with the partners for me coming straight from the beach, like happy surfer guy.
Yeah.
And they hired me, and whatever, rest is history. So, I don't remember, what was your original question?
Why you got fired?
Oh, okay. So yeah, they hired me under this regime where they could hire me as the surf bum, right? Because they like me.
Oh, they were paying dog shit, weren't they?
They were paying okay, actually.
Okay.
And in the scheme of flight instruction, they were paying decent because their scheme was, and this is how they presented it to me, which I thought was great. They're like, hey, we've got these airplanes. We sell the airplanes is the business model, but people want to learn how to fly them because they're buying them.
Yeah.
So we hire instructors to teach them, but the instructor runs the flight school. So you set the schedule. We'll send you students because they're chomping at the bit to fly.
Yeah.
We'll send you the students. You just have to schedule them. You have to make sure the airplane, is in good shape to run, and you go fly. And there's a scheduling system, so it's not like total chaos. And we'll maintain the airplanes, obviously, because you can't do that. And they have to. They're building them there, so they can maintain them, no problem. I was like, this sounds like a great deal.
Yeah.
And we'll pay you a percentage. It's something like 64. I get 60 to 40. So the 40 goes to the overhead and the airplane expense. And I'm like, this is actually kind of fair in business sense. And I was savvy enough to notice that it's fair enough. So, and I was making decent money, and it was more than I could make in helicopters by like 2 times.
Okay.
So it was a good deal. And there was 3 instructors. I was one of them. And they sent me all of the sport pilot students because the other 2 instructors were regular instructors for airplane. And so they were teaching all the private pilots, commercial pilots, instructors, yada, yada, yada. And I just got all the recreational guys. So I was just having fun.
Sure.
Because you just got guys who are excited about airplanes and they just want to fly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to have fun flying airplanes and everything's good. And very quickly, a new partner came in and he decided to go to an academy model, which is like 0 to airlines. And so they flipped the entire business on its head and they said, we are going to put all our priority in getting people to pay up front and then running through this curriculum and sending them off to the airlines.
Got it. So it was like you were doing like a pay to play, like every flight as you go kind of deal.
And I sort of said, hey, you hired me under this criteria.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think I fit into that model because one, I don't actually agree with that way of training people. I teach in a very unique way, which won't fit into your curriculum. So I don't think it's actually wise for me to try to change the way that I operate because, quite frankly, your students love me. They are very happy with the way I teach.
Yeah.
Like if this is a customer-based company, then it makes more sense for me to say no to you right now.
Yeah.
And there were conversations where it was like, I'm your boss, and I was like, you did not hire me that way.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm like, you wouldn't have this job without me. And I was like, the customer's more important than you.
Yeah.
And it was that like clash, and in front of people, it was like not ideal. But I'm fucking stubborn.
How did they react to it?
Very respectfully, actually.
I think it's because you like put your dick on the table.
I did. I was like, no.
You're like, I have all of the leverage. Like,
there was a point. It was kind of crazy. And
that's awesome. I like that.
Tout my whatever superiority or something.
No, but that's not just business savvy. That's like self-respect.
And I had gained that because of the position, because of some of the other things that were happening in my life.
Yeah,
so, and there was a certain point where they had promised to up my pay by $10 an hour if I got increased ratings.
Yeah.
And they were also willing to help me get those ratings because they knew that I was going to be an asset in the company with more ratings.
Right.
And I was like, this is a good sign for a company to see this way. It's
Yeah.
like, we want to improve our employees so that our
Yeah.
business is better.
Right.
So we're going to give you incentive to do that,
Yeah.
and we're going to help you do it. And I said, well, this is great. I don't have the money, by the way, but if you can float it, I'll pay it with my paycheck.
Right.
Especially if you give me $10 an hour, I just pay it off with $10 extra an hour.
Right.
And then I racked up this debt for these other ratings, and I finally got them. I'm fucking stoked because not only am I dealing with all this other shit, but like it's no small thing to add on 4 new ratings, I think it was, or something, to a full-time workload.
Yeah.
So it's like this was like a huge accomplishment, and I disciplined myself, and I sacrificed a lot of my life to do it, and I was like, I'm really excited about what I've accomplished here, and I was like, hey, can we talk about the pay raise? And I was like, ooh, like silence, and I was like, oh, we about to go to war, son. Like,
So did they give you the 10 up front, like the 10 where you doing
No.
No,
they said when you get the rating, we'll add $10 to your rate.
Oh.
And so the timing was crazy because they had switched to the academy model, which essentially they were going to hire green instructors, which they had just trained,
Yeah.
and pay them less because they're brand new.
Yeah.
So they started getting an influx of instructors just as I got the rating.
Yeah.
So now they didn't need me to be there anymore. And
Right.
also, I was not going to fit into the model anyways.
Right.
Which they didn't come to me up front. They were just like throwing stuff out. So let's have a meeting about it. And I said, perfect. I'd love to have a meeting about it. That's what I want. You just sweep it under the rug. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
And so they set it up, and I walk in, and it's a panel. It's the 3 partners and me, one guy on the other end. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, physical dominance move. I understand. Like, I know what you guys are doing. Cool. By the way, these are my friends. Like, I started working there, and there was like 6 of us.
Yeah.
Like, we're a family.
Yeah.
They gave me the key the first day I came over there. Like, dude, we're like, like this is, come on.
Right. Right.
But the company had grown at that point, so there was 30 people now or something, and they're sitting there and they're like, the model doesn't work paying you that much, and I was sort of like, but you made me a promise. Are you gonna, betray that trust?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we can't pay you that much. And I'm like, well, I'm not even going to live in the academy model, so why can't we just separate it? And it was really diplomatic and, cordial and whatever. And it got to the point where he was like, we're not going to increase your pay. And I said, then I'm going to have to go to another flight school.
Yeah.
And they did a whisper thing, and they're like, all right, fine, we'll increase the pay. And it's like, good. It's like, this was the right, it's in terms of battle for justice in the, whatever, careers.
Yeah.
I was like, yay, Lee got a little win. And then, so that's sort of the context of where the relationship is going.
Right.
And then they wanted to, phase me into this new model because they recognized I was an asset, and they also had invested in me.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, how are we going to make Lee worth paying this much? We have to move him into an upper position in the new model where he's managing other flight instructors, or is in a chief pilot position or something like that. So they're now starting to manipulate me into
Taking on more responsibility.
taking on this other students, and I'm a helpful guy. So they say, oh shit, we've got all these check rides. Can you spend a couple hours with this person? They really need help in this, and you're the guy to do it. And it was true. It's like I had high experience. I was very good at that portion of flight instruction, and I said, yeah, of course. Like we're family. We're working together. I'm not going to just completely separate roles because I'm a robot.
Right.
It's like, I'll help you when you need help. So, of course, I'll help at my rate. It's like, cool, no problem. And so they're taking a loss because they need to shuffle people through. So, it's fair balance. And so they're like, not intentionally, but manipulating me into roles that were not agreed upon. Fine, I don't care. I'm not that rigid, so I don't care. But I start operating in these roles a little bit more, and I ended up actually teaching the ground school for the academy, which I really enjoyed. I was very good at.
Yeah.
And I was actually also doing like social promotions as well, which they really liked me in. I was doing like these free pilot school classes on YouTube or something, and they liked it, and it was good. I was like, this is working well. And
There's a YouTube Lee out there teaching pilot license classes?
I think there's maybe 2 or 3 videos until they stopped doing it that way because it wasn't producing as much traffic as they wanted, so they changed it to a Zoom model.
Okay.
Which I still taught in a Zoom model.
Okay.
So I taught a hybrid class, which was a Zoom plus in-person class, which was really hard to manage actually. And some of it I did remotely because it was COVID, but eventually I transitioned back in and started working there again and in person. And gosh, I'm trying to remember the specific series of events that led to them. Oh, because I was operating kind of half and half, which was their push in this new model, they started including me in unpaid meetings as an hourly employee. And I was like, big mistake. It's like, big mistake. Because they were like, you have to mandatory show up to this meeting. And then I would immediately respond to, am I getting paid?
Yeah.
And they would be like, no. And then I would say,
No.
why would I go to the meeting then?
Yeah.
And, goodwill, I show up to the first one, and I wouldn't say that I shat on the whole meeting, but I was defiant about everything they were doing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't agree with the model.
Yeah.
It was like very clear. And I was like, why? Very bluntly, I was like, why do you want me here?
Yeah.
I am going to be oppositional to everything you do here because you clearly understand that I fundamentally don't agree with what you're doing.
Yeah.
As a company, but I like you as a person, so I'm trying to help you. And also, it's probably important to have someone like me here.
Yeah.
To check your authoritativeness. So it's like I'm fine with showing up here, but you have to pay me the hours that I'm missing because I'm neglecting students to be here.
Yeah.
And also my pay is being affected.
Yeah.
So pay me. And it went like another meeting, and I showed up, and it's like, are we being paid? And they're like, no. And it's like, well, then I have to leave.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to leave. It's like, well, stay for a little bit. I said, okay, but I'm going to leave in 10 minutes. Like, okay, fine. And it's like, set terms, agree to terms, actualize. And, it was fairly manipulative to be like, hopefully he stays a little bit longer because he feels guilty. Do you know me? So there's a lot of conflict. And then eventually they were like, mandatory meeting at 3 o'clock. And I was just like,
yeah, pay me.
Try it.
Yeah.
Come on. I'm going surfing.
Yeah.
Was my response. I was literally like, I'm going to go surfing because that's important to me.
Yeah.
And it's my time, not yours.
Yeah.
So and I went surfing, happy-go-lucky, came back, la da 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 da, and everyone's all silent. What's going to happen to Lee? What's going to happen to Lee?
Yeah.
I'm like, what just happened? They were like, that was a paid meeting. And I was like, finally. I was like, sweet. Why are you guys so glum?
Yeah.
Like, we won.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys got paid meetings, which you should get as an hourly employee.
Right.
And then they were doing a lot of transitionary things where I met with him kind of business to business because at this point I was running a business.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of hourly versus salary situations and kind of trying to understand. And this is also my friend who's running the business. And we're sitting down and he's like, we're going to transition to I forget what he called it. There was some sort of new tax law that came out. And they had to transition to W-2. They had to transition to W-2s for everybody, which means they needed to abide by a whole bunch of different rules.
Yeah, you're now a part of the entity.
Yeah.
You are no longer a business to business.
And I responded with, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
I was like, this is a nightmare.
Yeah.
He's like, I need you to sign a W-2. And I was like, I don't think I can legally operate here under a W-2 status.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's actually possible because you're not going to pay me for work I'm doing.
Right.
I'm like, it's important that you keep people as contract. And he blew up. In front of everybody type of blew up. And he's like, do you think that we're always going to do everything legally at this place? And I was like, I think I have to leave
Yeah.
I think I have to walk away right now. And I kept working there a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It was kind of crazy towards the end because I'm like, man, dude. I mean, like, I sympathize with the guy because it's like,
he's trying to make a business work.
He's trying to make a business work. He's trying to like create a future for himself that's not like debilitating, and he has to like continue to run a difficult flight school that's hard to operate. And he's trying to, be more intelligent about his business operation, but he's also sacrificing all of his employees to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
So I'm like I understand what you have to do, but I won't like operate under this rule.
Yeah.
So.
But also it gives him a ton of authority over you that would totally put you at his like whim for no gain.
What do you mean?
Well, if you're a W-2 employee, he can force you to show up to meetings like that. And,
right.
Yeah.
Precisely. So like the context is very important there,
right.
which is why I brought all that up.
He wouldn't pay you in that case, right?
Correct.
And then you, but by nature of not going to those meetings, he basically realized that by being a business to business, the only way you can ever do business together is if he's paying you, as it should be, right?
Yeah, right.
But he's paying you at the rate of a flight instructor.
Yeah.
Which is substantially higher because, as a salaried employee, generally speaking, it's why, like, when I was a contractor, the amount you charge is obscenely high, right? It's because you're also paying for your own insurance, you're paying for your own dental. So it ends up being more average with what you would expect with a salaried employee. So unless he's actually going to transfer you in as a salaried employee of the flight school, it's a huge conflict of interest, but it's also, I don't see, I would find that to be...
Oh, it was impossible.
Yeah.
Which is what I sat down with him and I was
I'm like, this is legally incongruent.
I was like, dude, I need to level with you. I don't see how you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
And I said it like that. I was like, I mean, I'm not agreeing, not because I'm a stubborn asshole, which is also true, and I'm acknowledging that. But like, I looked at the laws, I looked at the stipulations, I've evaluated this, and I don't see a way for you to move forward
with this plan.
And because I was right, he knew I was right. That's when he blew up.
Yeah. Because
he didn't want to acknowledge the fact that he couldn't do it. He couldn't play both sides.
Yeah.
And he felt cornered. And I was just like, look, man, and it was deeper and kind of almost meaner than that, but it was pragmatic.
Yeah.
In that he was like, well, we can do this. And I was like, what about that? And he was like, well, we can do this. And I was like, what about that? I was like, everything was getting shot down because I was like, are you going to pay them for fueling the aircraft? Because we do that too, which we're not allowed to do, by the way.
Right.
And we're doing that in goodwill for you. And you'd have to certify us to do that. But we do that because it operates the business better and we don't get paid for it.
Right.
It's like, and we're not going to pay for ground time. And I was like, how are you going to offset that? And he's like, well, we're going to do more ground instruction in the airplane. And I was like,
so, like, while you guys are waiting for the plane to be fueled, you'd be giving
instructions. But he also meant kind of like in flying, during flying.
So you'd be teaching them how instruments work while not being in the air?
It was like, make sure the airplane's running while you're teaching.
What the fuck?
And I was like...
That is sketchy.
And I don't want to shit on the guy because, like, I'm sketchy too.
Well, still, but, like, that's...
But there's some...
Yeah.
Pretty practical.
Well, and then downstream of that, these people, ostensibly several of them, will become pilots. They're going to talk to other pilots about the other pilots' flight schools. If this comes up 5-6 years down the line, you get discredited. Like, that fucks up your entire career path.
I that's the things I was bringing up.
Right. You're like, you're not, it's not just the business that would go down if this came up. You would be burning the names of everybody that was a contract employee that played along with this game.
It'd be like, oh, you worked for them.
Right. And you did all of those things knowing in full consciousness that what you were doing was a gray area at best.
Yeah. And, the only saving factor is, and people don't understand this is the aviation industry.
Yeah.
This is the reality of how people become pilots.
Yeah.
Like this... The reason that I liked working for these guys is because they were an enigma. They did not exist within the same scope.
But then they were like, how do we start to conform to the standards of what the rest of
And
the
then they
industry
just
is
became
doing?
like anybody else.
Yeah.
And then they just sacrificed everything in sight of in a like a mild way, a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look at the like there was a point where I said, look at the record, dude. This doesn't turn out good.
So how do other academies make money?
It's the same model.
Did they do a salary? It's the same model?
The same model. So it's like pay flight time only typically.
Okay.
In fact,
and then they just ask that the instructors to do
volunteer.
Things that they're not supposed to do.
The instructors are legally required to provide ground instruction for a license.
Yeah.
But there's no hour requirement on that ground instruction, besides a few hours before the exam. So the schools will pay them for those minimum 3 hours before the exam, but no other ground instruction. So any other instruction they do is volunteer on the ground.
So when it was getting fueled, doesn't that take like up to an hour?
Could be, yeah.
So every flight they were saying you would do ground instruction while getting fuel?
Or whenever you could. Walking, briefing, logging hours.
Okay. And then I guess the biggest issue is like the tax law thing. I guess that was like a new curveball.
Yeah.
That was the big thing that was like so how did all of the other academies adjust? They switched to like a salaried employee situation?
I went rogue after that, so I didn't participate anymore.
Got it.
Because at a certain point they recognized that I'm always going to be the guy that says that doesn't work, dude.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'll help you, but we have to do it right.
Yeah.
And if you want to do things in a way that's detrimental to me, I'm gonna stand up for myself.
Yeah.
And if you want to oppress everybody that works here, which is what was happening.
The other thing too is that you taught the people underneath you, right?
Yeah.
So like you were probably feeling protective over them.
I totally.
Because you brought them into this scenario.
Felt super responsible.
Right, like it's so funny because in college I started a frat with a bunch of people, and I taught our pledge class. So there was 60 kids basically that like joined the class, and the year after that, a bunch of them held like senior positions of authority in the group, and these people were fully like I said, like at a certain point, like they were in positions above me even.
Sure.
And they would still come to me and they'd like ask me, like, "Hey, this older kid's kind of being a dick. Can you help?" Like he's like, I'd be like, "You have like," but I would never be like, "You can do something." But internally, I was like, "This is crazy. Like you're technically outranking me." And then I would go because it's like at a certain point there is that level of paternity almost.
Yeah, sure.
And I think, especially if you're in a position where somebody's starting a career, and you're like, I've basically given you.
Some of these guys, it's like their first job.
Right. Exactly.
And this can't be your first job. This is not a good example.
Right.
Like, don't let this happen.
That's part of what I'm going through, like right now, even where it's like I work with a lot of people that are younger, that it's like their first or their second job, and some of the leadership shit they have to deal with. I'm just like, this isn't normal. Like, you need to set boundaries. You need to set, like, it can't. The reason that they're hiring people of a similar age group right now is so that they can treat you a certain way.
Right.
Because you don't have perspective.
Yeah.
And, to your point, like, I don't let that stand. I'm like, that's not acceptable. Like, you can't. If you work here for 5 years and then you go to another place and you're like, why the fuck did nobody that's been around the block stand up for me?
Yeah.
That also, like, demolishes that person's ability to trust in the future.
Yeah, and their next job is fucked, and their next job is fucked. And then they're digging themselves out of this big old
right.
hole.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yes, agreed. It was like all of that.
Fuck.
And I don't know. I don't try to make a huge deal out of it because like.
What's that? It's just when you start a thing. Like you said, you were part of it when it was super small too. Like
it wasn't the beginning, but it was 3 of us.
Very early, yeah. It's still like.
And those people went on to become airline pilots. Most of them. Like all of those people that were first job
I
guys?
remember asking you at one point, because my brother's getting his pilot's license, and I was like, what do you think about these places? And you were like, they're just commercial airline factories.
Yeah.
I was like, what does he mean by that?
That.
That's what you mean by
That's
that.
exactly what I'm talking about.
And I was like, fuck. Like,
Yeah.
because I sent that to my brother, and he was kind of like blasé about it, but he really wants to be a commercial airline pilot. I know that you seem to have reservations about that.
I mean, I'm almost like adamantly opposed to it.
I'm surprised because it's like we talk about ways that you could quickly make cash.
And yeah, it's really.
There's like at a drop of a hat, you could go make like 160 grand.
And it's a part-time job.
Yeah, you'd be a glorified bus driver.
Yeah. Yep.
Why? Why not do it for like
Why?
a year and then you're chilling for like 5?
I mean, the same reason that you won't make the same sacrifices in your industry.
Fair.
It's
But
like,
I'm still doing some sacrifices.
well,
Like,
so am I. I still worked for the guy in Hawthorne who didn't have my best interest in mind.
well, yeah, but like you were making buku bucks. There's no middle ground for you. Is kind of my point.
What do you mean?
I can take jobs that I don't feel 100 like. It's not a binary for me, right? Like it's not like make indie games for 35 grand or make mobile games for 160 grand. It's like, oh, I can work on like PC console for like mid-sized studios for like, something in between that.
So.
Also, I need to walk my dog soon. She's starting to
Okay.
get antsy.
Well, I'll tie it up with this because I guess it's an important sort of end point to make is.
You can't put a price on good asshole. I'm sorry.
I hope this doesn't affect my enjoyment of getting my ass licked.
Have you ever had your ass eaten? I think you told me you did. I've never had somebody eat my ass.
I mean, not like fully, but I definitely had an experience where it was like close enough that it counted.
Yeah. She went below the balls to the taint, but didn't quite make it to the booty hole.
Yeah, and I remember.
You were disappointed. You were like, you could just go a little lower if you wanted.
No, it was. I think it was classy.
It was, what do you mean by that? It was classy.
You know, it wasn't like.
She didn't give too much away.
It was crossing the boundary, but it was like, is this okay?
She wanted you to know that she had the capacity.
Yeah.
That
And
you guys
if
needed.
I showed positive whatever response that
If your butthole had tightened, she would have
I'd
gone.
be like, oh, okay, so he's not interested. It's fine. Well, yeah, it's classy.
I think if your butthole tightens, that means you're excited.
I don't actually know. I'm not that experienced.
Well, because your dick, to get your dick hard, you have to squeeze your butthole.
Mm.
If your dick's getting harder,
I actually don't know any of this, so.
Really? Well, we talked about that. You can't. I was saying you couldn't wiggle your dick without
you
clenching
mentioned
your
it,
butthole.
And I said, no, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
It's like all of the muscles.
So
that
I haven't
control.
experienced it.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Think about it the next time you try to wiggle your dick.
Okay, that seems to be far.
I'm
away
doing
from
it right now.
That's nice.
I'm making eye contact. Where's my bottle?
So I'm not some sort of purist in this sense.
Well, it's not even purity. For me, it's more like efficiency. Because you want to live your life in a much more like laid back way.
I'm aware of all of this.
Okay.
So, and this kind of rolls back. I guess this is going to be a longer story than I hoped it to be.
Fuck.
This rolls back to like I'm 12 or 13,
Okay.
and I'm playing on flight simulators, and I'm like, I'm
I
gonna be a pilot.
remember, yeah.
I'm gonna be a pilot. You fly different airplanes, and you
Yeah.
decide what you're gonna fly. And some kids are flying Boeings, you know, and they're playing with all the panel buttons. And they're like, this is fucking cool. I want to be an airline pilot. This is great. And immediately I looked at it and I was like, that's a bus. That's a bus. It's called an Airbus. The Boeings aren't called Airbuses, but
I mean, actually, some of them are Airbuses. Though.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
like A320. That's Airbus.
Literally, yeah.
It says Airbus.
I like that they don't fuck around.
Yeah, I mean, good, but I was like, do I want to be a bus driver? And nothing against bus drivers either.
Something against them, I guess.
No, dude, like, this is why this is a longer story, and also awesome, great story, is like, I fucking love riding the bus.
Yeah.
Love it. It's like one of my favorite things,
Yeah.
especially in poor areas. I don't know why. Maybe the...
Did you like the opulence? You feel...
No. No.
You feel like you could just have the
And I'm
upper
not
half
particularly
lips.
out of place either.
No,
because I'm a
100%.
little
No, that's
scraggly.
why I'm joking. Is like...
And like, I'm usually wearing something that looks like a could be a poor white guy there.
Yeah.
Even though kind of very much not, I should say. But I don't know. I just like riding the bus. I think it's effective transportation.
Yeah.
I think it's wise of a society to use that kind of transportation. It's cheap. It's like, I don't know, moderately effective.
It's economically efficient.
You can do things like read or write while you're on the bus, and I get a lot of insights.
In the U.S., it's a nightmare because it's like 4 times as long to ride the bus. But yeah, out here I agree.
No, well, even in Compton, I like riding the bus. But
interesting.
Anywho, I didn't want to be bus drivers. Is kind of the seed that was planted initially.
Right.
But later, very close to now, when I started my own business and started flying in pretty much the exact area that I want to fly in, which is tailwheel aerobatics, and teaching that almost exclusively, which is very freeing, and the people you interact with are like-minded and want a different perspective of reality, which aligns with a lot of some of my other reasons for flying, other than it's fucking cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm in this way where I'm becoming more and more free in my monetary exchange in the world. And don't get me wrong, the opportunity surfaced. It was like one flight school approached me and they said, "Do you want to be our chief pilot?" And I like the guys, like they're cool friends, and I think it'd be a fun opportunity. And I even had this long conversation, or I wouldn't call it long actually. It was in depth enough for them to, in their terms, not like a normal company, but it's a startup. So we're like actually setting terms for me working for them as a chief pilot, which is a perfect transition to literally anything else in the industry. It's like, if you have that on your resume, you can do most anything in the industry. Like, you were chief pilot of a flight school. And there's some, what do you want to call that? Sympathetic compensation in revolving around teaching, being the chief pilot of a startup flight school in the middle of Compton. It's like, come on, you're a white guy. It's like, slap you in the face. Why wouldn't you do this, right? The funny thing is about any of these things is whenever you're faced with a true opportunity to pursue life in the way, I don't want to say you're meant to, but you're best suited for, the opportunities are going to be bountiful. It will not be a situation where you have one clear decision. It never is.
Yeah.
When you become capable in the world and effective and desired, opportunities show up in a lot of different ways. And they usually show up like you were talking about. This feels like the worst time. And I said, maybe it's the best time. Because actually I feel that that's what happens, is there's some sort of collision of forces. And who knows, we can't even quantify this because there's so many goddamn humans doing this. There's a collision of forces that occur between all of these different players. One of them is like your boss who's giving you trouble. Like, that was a perfect player. Like, think about it. That's the perfect situation.
It really simplified things.
Like, so oftentimes we see all of these opportunities and we're like, man, this is really conflicting. But if you're able to step outside of it just like the slightest bit and go, maybe it's not though. Maybe these are like exact signals I need. So when all of this happened, I started getting these signals. Somebody approached me and they were like, we need pilots for a King Air position. Badass plane. Twin prop, turbo, cool job. I mean, everybody says flying a King Air is the tits, and it's real flying. It's like, it's still real flying. It's like you would still be Lee in that airplane.
Yeah.
Like, don't discount it. And some of my, like, I met a student while I was teaching in Hawthorne. I'm teaching in this little fabric airplane, just going upside down with people going hee. And I meet one of my students. I'm like, holy shit, dude, how are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm flying the King Air now. And I was like, oh, sweet. Are you like first officer? And he's like, oh no, dude, I'm captain. He's like, shit goes fast. I'm like, dude, this is fucking rad. Like, good work. You know, I'm really excited for him. And it was just like, it's so funny because in terms of hierarchy, like, I'm here and he's like up here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he's like, you know, some of these guys that are up here that were my students are like, you know, like, what are you doing, dude? What the fuck are you doing? Like, you're better than me at this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, naturally better.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you going this way? Like, why aren't you going this way? And I'm like, they you know, they don't ask it that way. There's just people that show up and they're like, there's this opportunity. We need good people. Like, and I ask them more questions, you know, like, what's the compensation? What's the timeline? What's the qualifications? Yada, yada, yada. And at a certain point, I had this really long back and forth with this guy about it. And at a certain point, I was like, you know, I've been in this industry long enough to see how people in that position are treated. And I understand the importance of being the low guy on the totem pole and putting in your hours, but I'm not that guy. I'm not a guy that puts in the hours and is low on the totem pole because I have these skills. And because the system is set in a way that I have to progress in that fashion, I'm not discarding the utility of it, and I'm not saying that I can't be humble enough to participate, but it doesn't make sense.
You've kind of already passed
It doesn't
the
make
point where you could.
And I am a conglomerate of skill sets that don't fit into pathways, right? So it's like, it doesn't. It's like you give this resume to somebody and it's like King Air first officer position. It's like basically you're transporting people, usually wealthier people, and you're doing the radio work and you're checking the airplane, you're making sure it's fueled and like not unimportant things, but you're a bitch in pilot world.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's not that simple. Like it's not. And to oversimplify the job of the first officer as the bitch
Right.
is like
Low on the totem pole.
I mean, they're not the bitch. They have a very important job.
Right.
But again, it's like
Bitches have important jobs.
yeah. And I'm not trying to say I'm superior to those people because they're doing something that I'm not doing.
Right.
And actually, I'm not capable of doing because I haven't been trained to do it.
Right.
So whatever. I'm not like saying I'm better than these people because I'm overqualified. It's like it's not like that. But if you take a resume, Lee's resume, and I've never gotten a job with a resume, so I don't give a shit about it. You take Lee's resume, you give it to these people, and you're like, I want the King Air position. They're gonna be like, you're hired. Because they just like see this. This happened to me, and which is a funnier story because I went and tried to get an aircraft fueling job after I graduated college,
Yeah.
and it was like, you're hired, and then it was like, go do this drug test, and I was like,
I was there for that. I remember that.
cool.
Yeah.
Can't have that job.
Is that what happened?
Pretty much, yeah.
I didn't realize they caught on.
Well, they didn't, but it was kind of a kismet experience, which isn't that important for this discussion. Anyways, so like at a certain point when all this is occurring, you look at your own qualifications, like, and I like to call it, this is a new concept for me, and a lot of it's pulled from like.
And just to be clear, and this is not for you. This is for anybody that may watch this. Lee is sober as shit.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
I've been sober for quite a while.
Yeah.
But we talked about AA
Yeah.
earlier, so whatever.
Yeah.
That's
true.
So it's like.
And Lee, it was fucking never doing anything crazy.
What do you mean?
You weren't like shooting up black tar heroin or something under
Well,
a bridge.
no.
Well.
No. I mean, I don't like to minimize that time in my life either.
I know, but it's
get
not about minimizing it. It's about being clear about risks being taken.
Well, I mean, again, that's sort of divergent
Anyway,
from this discussion.
Let's talk about it another time.
It's like I went to some pretty dark places and I ended up on a deathbed. You know. It's
For
like,
sure. No,
so-
I'm aware of that story, but that to me is. I don't think that anyway.
You can take that as it is, but whatever. I don't like to derive significance from that because it's sort of just like part of the journey. Anyways, so when you have whatever this, what I was saying is, I'm calling it now like the real resume, and I think a lot of this is derived from David Goggins. He calls it the everyday resume, and it was like sticky notes on his mirror, where he's like, I fucked up today, and he writes in his mirror. But it's like, and he talks about this another guy in similar space.